Chapter 875. One of the two groups of people was led by a purple-clothed lady. Her face was also extremely beautiful. However, her somewhat narrow beautiful eyes contained some harshness. The other group of people was led by a yellow-clothed young man with an upright appearance. At this moment, both of them were looking at Qin Paisai with playful gazes. "Princess Qin, long time no see." The yellow-clothed youth smiled faintly. "Sai, I can still call you princess now. After the 5 academies recruitment, your father will be relieved of his position. You won't even be a princess anymore." The purple-clothed woman chuckled. "Zi Yusin, Huang Feiyun, don't go too far." Qin Paisai shouted, her beautiful face filled with anger. Zi Yusin was the daughter of the Violet Smoke Ridge Lord, and Huang Feiyun was the son of the Yellow Dragon Ridge Lord. "Qin Paisai, I'll give you one more chance. Let your father submit to the Hua family. This way, he can keep his position. Otherwise, your Skywind Ridge will still be eliminated in the 5 academies selection." Zi Yusin said harshly. "The Hua family?" Yi Guqin's eyes darkened. It seemed that the Hua family's waters ran deep. "Dream on. My father is a rogue cultivator. How can he submit to the aristocratic families?" Qin Paisai rebuked coldly. "Rogue cultivator camp? Aristocratic family camp?" Yi Guqin was puzzled. Han Lingxian lowered her voice and said, "The Sword Alliance is formed by some powerful rogue cultivators and aristocratic families. Although it's an alliance, it's naturally divided into 2 camps." "I see." Yi Guqin was enlightened. The Sword Alliance was a single entity. However, it was formed by rogue cultivators and aristocratic families. As time passed, there would naturally be conflicts between the 2 sides. However, Yi Guqin didn't care too much. He only needed the identity of a sword son to participate in the Sky Pride battlefield. He didn't plan to get involved in the Sword Dynasty's internal strife. "Oh, if that's the case, it's a pity. Young masters, I'll leave the selection of the 5 academies to you." Zi Yusin smiled coldly and turned her head, her tone respectful. The 2 young men stepped out slowly, their auras condensing. Those 2 are Zhong Yan and Xiao Feng. When the 2 of them walked out, the faces of the Su siblings, Zuiqiu Qing, Zhen Lang, and the others froze and turned slightly pale. Qin Paisai also took a step back, her face filled with shock. Xiao Feng, ranked 86th on the sword ranking. Zhong Yan, ranked 84th on the sword ranking. Not only that, on the other side, Huang Feiyun had a playful look on his face. He turned his body and another young man and woman walked out from the crowd of Huang Long Ridge. 79th on the sword ranking, Nie Qian. 75th on the sword ranking, Gong Yangming. Seeing these 2 people, Qin Paisai's beautiful face turned even paler, and her delicate body couldn't help but tremble slightly. Violet Smoke Ridge and Huang Long Ridge had recruited 4 geniuses from the sword ranking in order to deal with Tianfeng Ridge. Although these 4 geniuses were ranked lower on the sword ranking, not even comparable to Yu Yuankui, let alone Yen Worried Guest. However, this didn't mean that they were weak. As long as they could be ranked on the sword ranking, they had some skills. At least, they weren't comparable to the geniuses of Tianfeng Ridge. Seeing these 4 geniuses on the sword ranking, the geniuses of Tianfeng Ridge withered like frosted eggplants. Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing, who had been arrogant in Tianfeng Ridge, also lowered their heads like ostriches. They didn't dare to speak, for fear of being targeted by these geniuses on the sword ranking. Even the battle madwoman, Zuiqiu Qing, had a trace of dread on her face. Among the 4 geniuses, Nie Qian, who was ranked 79th, glanced at Tianfeng Ridge and paused for a moment on Yi Guqin. She then laughed and said, "So these are the geniuses of Tianfeng Ridge? Aren't they too weak? I can't believe they have someone with stage 3 cultivation." "Indeed. Huang Feiyun, you recruited us to deal with these weaklings. It's a waste of our talents." Gong Yangming, who was ranked 75th on the sword ranking, said lightly. I didn't expect this batch of geniuses from Tianfeng Ridge to be even worse than before, Huang Feiyun sneered. Everyone from Tianfeng Ridge felt their cheeks burning. They were very embarrassed and angry, but they didn't dare to be presumptuous in front of these 4 geniuses on the sword ranking. Ye Guqin looked at the scene in front of him indifferently. In his opinion, this kind of tit-for-tat was too childish. He didn't want to get involved at all. Forget it. It's boring. Let's go to the arena and challenge them, Gong Yangming said with a wave of his hand. The other 3 geniuses on the sword ranking shrugged. They ignored the people from Tianfeng Ridge and went to the arena. Zi Yusin looked at Qin Paisai mockingly and said, I heard that there's a person in Tianfeng Ridge's sword-ranking divine temple who can break Hua Wuxiu's sword move. He's called the Sword Demon. I was scared out of my wits. Yes, but now it seems that the Sword Demon is just passing by Tianfeng Ridge. Unfortunately, if the Sword Demon is here, I'm afraid we won't dare to target you. Huang Feiyun shook his head and pretended to sigh. In fact, Zi Yusin and Huang Feiyun were a little frightened when they heard about the Sword Demon. They were afraid that the Sword Demon would join Tianfeng Ridge. However, at a glance, they were all mediocre people. The Sword Demon wasn't there at all. This made Zi Yusin and Huang Feiyun breathe a sigh of relief. You. Humph. Qin Paisai's expression was extremely ugly. She also wanted to rope in the rumored Sword Demon. However, it was a pity that the Sword Demon had vanished into thin air. Ye Guqin looked calm. He didn't expect that he could cause such a big commotion just by breaking Hua Wuxiu's sword move. You guys go and try too. Qin Paisai turned her head and said. Su Wenbin and the others nodded weakly. In their opinion, the people of Tianfeng Ridge were doomed in this 5 academy selection. Young Master Dugu, you can also try. Qin Paisai looked at Ye Guqin. To be honest, Qin Paisai didn't believe Ye Guqin. She also didn't understand why Qin Zhen and Han Lingxian would believe Ye Guqin. It would be good enough if he could guarantee that he wouldn't be eliminated. How could he have the extra strength to help Tianfeng Ridge? I don't need it. Ye Guqin shook his head lightly. What? Qin Paisai was stunned. Ye Guqin rejected her. The other geniuses of Tianfeng Ridge also looked at Ye Guqin with some surprise. In fact, they also wanted to see how capable this boastful young man was. It was also because of this that Qin Paisai thought of coming to the Swordless Temple. However, Ye Guqin didn't even dare to try. Young Master Dugu. Han Lingxian was also a little surprised. In her heart, Ye Guqin shouldn't be a coward. But why didn't he want to try? In the face of everyone's questioning eyes, Ye Guqin was expressionless. He had already broken it once in Tianfeng Ridge, so there was no need to repeat it again. It was better to use this time to adjust his state of mind. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Ye Guqin said lightly. Then, he directly left the Swordless Temple under everyone's stunned gaze. Chapter 876. Looking at Ye Guqin's back, all the Sky Prides of Skywind Ridge looked at each other. They didn't expect that Ye Guqin didn't even have the courage to try. Ha, this is too funny. Is this how the Sky Prides of Skywind Ridge are like? They don't even dare to challenge him. Zi Yusin laughed so hard that she was swaying back and forth. Sai, let's go. Even if we didn't target him, these people would have come for nothing. Huang Feiyun had completely lost interest in the people of Skywind Ridge. He didn't even have the interest to mock them. The two of them directly led the Sky Prides of Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge to the arena. Qin Paisai was so angry that her delicate body trembled. Her face was so pale that it was frightening, and there was also an uncontrollable anger. Humiliating. Qin Paisai had never been so humiliated, let alone in front of Zi Yusin and Huang Feiyun. Ye Guqin had humiliated Skywind Ridge. Sister Lingxian, this is what you did. Qin Paisai was so angry that her eyes were red. She had never been discriminated against and wronged like this before. She squatted on the ground and sobbed. I'm sorry, Paisai. It's all my fault. Han Lingxian was also full of guilt. She also couldn't understand Yiguchen's actions. Sigh, this Dugu Wubai is really harming others and himself. Su Wenbin finally found an opportunity. While comforting Qin Paisai, he continued to add fuel to the fire. That's right. I think the Lord's spiritual Bodhi was fed to the dogs. Su Jingjing put her hands on her waist with a look of disdain and mockery. However, they had forgotten how cowardly they were. They couldn't even raise their heads in front of Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge like ostriches. But now, they were arrogant and mocking Yiguchen. It seems that we can only rely on ourselves. Zuoqiu Qing sighed. Even she had no confidence. A dark cloud covered the heads of the people of Skywind Ridge. On the other side, Yiguchen, who had left the sword-ranking Divine Palace, casually found a restaurant and poured himself a bottle of wine. Of course, he was not idle. Instead, it was in a place like a restaurant where news from all walks of life was the most up-to-date. Ah, this selection of the 5 academies is a gathering of heroes. That's right. Hua Xingjie of the Hua family, known as the #1 person under Hua Wuxiu and ranked 19th on the sword ranking, is also going to make a move this time. And the Yin family of the Hidden Mist Ridge, Yin Wufeng, is also an expert. Have you forgotten about Shangguan Yan from the Shangguan family? There's also the Yu family. Although they aren't as powerful as the Hua family, the Yin family, or the Shangguan family, they have produced a proud daughter, Yushuang Yan. She's ranked 27th on the sword ranking, and her strength is also quite extraordinary. The Yu family. Looks like it's the family that Yu Yuankue belongs to. Yushuang Yan, ranked 27th on the sword ranking, isn't weak. Yiguchen thought to himself as he drank. Not to mention the heavenly talents of the aristocratic families, there are also a lot of itinerant cultivators this time. Gui Jianqiu, Yan Chou, none of them are easy to deal with. Many people were sighing. This selection of the 5 academies was particularly fierce because of the battlefield of the heavenly talents. The competition would also be crueler than usual. Yiguchen didn't show the slightest fear. After experiencing so many storms, this kind of scene couldn't shake his mind at all. At this moment, an old man walked towards Yiguchen. The old man was slightly stooped, and one of his legs was disabled. He was leaning on a wooden crutch, and his hair and beard were all white. Especially his beard, which was as long as a horsetail whisk and almost dragged to the ground. "Young man, may I ask for a sip of wine from you?" The crippled old man said with a smile. Yiguchen glanced at the crippled old man. He didn't sense any special fluctuations. He was just an ordinary old man. Perhaps it was because this old man reminded Yiguchen of the old drunkard, Mo Tianfeng. He smiled faintly and pushed a pot of wine in front of him. The crippled old man sat in front of Yiguchen and began to drink his wine. "Young man, you're not a local of the Sword Dynasty, are you?" The crippled old man said. Yiguchen's eyes dimmed. "No, I just want to try my luck and see if I can enter the 5 academies." Tisk tsk, that young man picked the wrong time. The competition this time is the most intense. Everyone wants to enter the 5 academies and compete for the position of sword master or even jiankoe. The crippled old man took a sip of wine and shook his head. "Old man, are you very familiar with this matter?" Yiguchen's eyes flashed. "Ha, I've been hanging around in restaurants and tea houses for a long time. Naturally, I've heard a lot of rumors. The waters of the Sword Dynasty are very deep." The old man shook his head and sighed. "Oh, why do you say so?" Yiguchen became more and more interested. "Sigh, I'm afraid that the Sword Dynasty will soon be in chaos. Young man, I advise you to leave the Sword Dynasty as soon as possible." The crippled old man suddenly lowered his voice and said mysteriously. "Ha, I've seen a lot of storms and waves. It's not to this extent." Yiguchen smiled faintly and lowered his head to take a sip of the wine in his cup. "That's right. No wonder he was able to fight against Gu Xiaoyang and the blood-fighting Emperor Hao Tian on the infinite wasteland plain. He was also able to resist the other overlords. The name of the sword sect's Yiguchen is like thunder to my ears. Yiguchen's eyes flashed with a cold light and suddenly looked up. There was no one in front of him. The crippled old man had already disappeared. Yiguchen's face was solemn and he didn't say a word. After a while, he silently left the restaurant. Who was it? Yiguchen thought to himself. His true identity was exposed by that crippled old man. Who was that crippled old man? Which camp did he belong to? What was his identity? That crippled old man's strength is unfathomable. If he had any ill intentions, he could have attacked me directly. He didn't show any hostility to me, so at least he won't be a threat to me for the time being. Yiguchen thought to himself. Although he knew nothing about that crippled old man, the crippled old man didn't show any threat to him. Yiguchen wouldn't let down his guard, but he wouldn't be afraid either. I need to enter the 5 academies as soon as possible and then find a way to contact Kenpo. Once I become the Sword's Son, I'll participate in the battlefield of prodigies and join the Overlord forces. Yiguchen calculated his future path. As for the Sword Dynasty, he couldn't get involved in it now and he didn't want to. A few hours later, Yiguchen returned to the inn. Those geniuses from the Skywind Ridge who were already suspicious of him treated him coldly. Su Wenbin, Su Jingjing, Zuoqiu Qing, Zhen Lang, and other prodigies looked at Yiguchen with suspicion and disdain. In their eyes, Yiguchen had left the swordless Divine Palace alone because he was afraid of the stage. In a place like the Sword Dynasty where strength was respected, how could such a timid person be respected by others? Yiguchen didn't bother to explain. When the 5 academies selection began, everything would be revealed. Qin Paisai cried for the whole afternoon. When she came out, her eyes were red. She looked at Yiguchen with a faint resentment, but she didn't explode because Han Lingxian stopped her. Young Master Dugu, I hope you don't mind. Paisai is also under a lot of pressure. Han Lingxian explained with a headache. I don't mind. Yiguchen nodded and returned to his room. He sat cross-legged on the bed with a deep look in his eyes. Although I can't reveal my identity as Yiguchen of the Sword Sect. But this time, let the name Sword Demon be known throughout the Sword Dynasty. Chapter 877. A few days later, the entire Thunder City was in a state of turmoil. Countless sounds of wind breaking could be heard as they flew towards the Honorable Sword's ruins, which were thousands of miles away from the Thunder City. Under Qin Zhen's lead, Yiguchen and the others also headed towards the Sword Venerable Relic. Before long, Yiguchen saw the Sword Sovereign's ruins. The ruins were located in a vast basin. There were ancient trees, lush vegetation, and undulating mountains. Spiritual mist filled the basin, making it impossible for people to see the scene inside clearly. However, Yiguchen could vaguely feel that the purple void lightning in his body seemed to be moving. He couldn't help but ask, does the sovereign cultivate the Tao of lightning? As soon as he said that, everyone from the Tianfeng Ridge looked over. Qin Paisai didn't want to say anything. In their opinion, Yiguchen didn't care about the 5 academies selection at all. He didn't even know about the Sword Sovereign's ruins. Even Qin Zhen furrowed his brows, wondering if he had misjudged the situation. That's right. The owner of the Sword Sovereign's ruins is the Lightning Sword Sovereign. The broken tribulation divine weapon in the depths of the ruins is his sword, Han Lingxian replied. Yiguchen nodded. In the surroundings of the Sword Venerable ruins, countless figures landed densely. They were all geniuses from the 360 ridges. They were led by their lords to the ruins to participate in the selection. At this moment, a hearty laugh sounded from nearby. 2 groups of people walked toward the Skywind Ridge. There were 2 middle-aged men in the lead. One of them was dressed in purple and had a dignified appearance. The other was dressed in yellow and had an awe-inspiring aura. Yiguchen and the others were familiar with the people behind them. They were Zi Yusen and Huang Feiyun, whom they had met at the sword-ranking divine palace. The 4 geniuses from the sword ranking were also among them. Hey, that's the Yellow Dragon Ridge and the Purple Smoke Ridge. They actually invited 4 geniuses from the sword ranking to help them. How generous. The people from the other ridges were amazed. If the geniuses from the sword ranking were distributed evenly, there might not even be one from each ridge. However, the Violet Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge had won over 4 prodigies of the sword ranking. At the same time, many gloating gazes were directed at the people from Tianfeng Ridge. It was obvious that Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge were here for Tianfeng Ridge. The 5 Academy selection was not a peaceful event. There would be many fights between geniuses. Hee, Brother Qin, how have you been? The purple-clothed man laughed. He was none other than the Purple Smoke Overlord. Beside him, the Yellow Dragon Tribal Lord also smiled and said, Brother Qin, a wise man submits to circumstances. You still have a chance. If you are willing to submit to the Hua family, the position of Tianfeng Tribal Lord will still be yours. Humph, this Qin is a loose cultivator. How can I submit to an aristocratic family? Qin Zhen coldly snorted. Ye Guqin looked at the scene in front of him calmly, a trace of doubt in his heart. Why did the Hua family want to recruit all the feudal lords for their own use? Could it be that the leader of the Sword Alliance would allow the Hua family to act so presumptuously? However, Ye Guqin didn't know much about the Sword Dynasty, so he couldn't figure out the reason. That's a pity. Since that's the case, the Tianfeng Ridge will have to be replaced. Everyone from the Tianfeng Ridge will be eliminated in this 5 Academy selection. The Purple Smoke Overlord shook his head. It was as if his words could determine the future of the people from Tianfeng Ridge. Su Wenbin, Su Jingjing, and the others' faces turned green when they heard this. Even Zuoqiu Qing, Zhen Lang, and the other geniuses didn't dare to say anything. They didn't have the confidence to refute the 4 geniuses of the sword ranking. However, blessings never came in pairs, and misfortunes never came alone. Another voice filled with hatred sounded, Hee, you're all here. And you, Dugu Wubai. Everyone looked over and saw a handsome young man in a dark blue robe walking over. It was young Master Yu Yuankue, who had been humiliated by Yan Cho Ku at the Tianfeng banquet. To Yu Yuankue, Tianfeng Ridge was definitely a nightmare for him. As one of the geniuses of the Yu family, he had suffered unprecedented humiliation. However, he didn't realize that it was because of his greed that he had made a fool of himself by admitting that he was the sword demon. Instead, he blamed everything on Ye Guqin. Seeing Yu Yuankue's arrival, everyone from Tianfeng Ridge changed their expressions. Qin Paisai gritted her teeth, and Han Lingxian also felt a sense of helplessness. I will take revenge for all the humiliation in this 5 Academy selection. Yu Yuankue said coldly. Suddenly, a faint sound of a flute sounded. Hearing the sound of the flute, Yu Yuankue, who had been extremely arrogant just a moment ago, immediately became serious. There was still some fear in his eyes. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. I was the one who attacked you. If you want revenge, come find me. A slender man in a bamboo hat appeared out of nowhere. It was Yan Cho Ku. Yan Cho Ku's appearance made the geniuses of Tianfeng Ridge feel relieved. Although Yu Yuankue was nothing in Yan Cho Ku's eyes, he was ranked 65th on the sword ranking. He was stronger than Gong Yangming and Nie Qian, who had been invited by the Purple Smoke Ridge and the Yellow Dragon Ridge. With Yan Cho Ku blocking Yu Yuankue, everyone from Tianfeng Ridge should be safe. However, before Qin Paisai and the others could breathe a sigh of relief, Yu Yuankue's lips curled into a cold smile. A group of people walked over again. The leader was a beautiful woman in a snow-white robe with a jade-like complexion. Her most prominent characteristic was her cold and indifferent face. She was like an iceberg, unapproachable, as if she viewed everyone as mere mortals. It's the genius of the Yu family, Yushuang Yan, the top genius ranked 27th on the sword ranking. Seeing the white-robed woman appear, there was a burst of exclamations. 27th on the sword ranking was already a very high ranking. Generally speaking, the top 50 on the sword ranking rarely changed. Most of them were stable. Yu Shuangyan. Yan Chouke's tone was slightly serious. Sister Shuangyan, it's her. Yu Yuankue walked over to Yu Shuangyan eagerly. Although Yu Shuangyan was very beautiful, her expression was very cold. You're a disgrace to the Yu family, Yu Shuangyan said coldly. This. Yu Yuankue was a little embarrassed. But, the Yu family is not something that anyone can bully. Yan Chouke, you'll have to pay the price, Yu Shuangyan said lightly. Go ahead. Yan Chouke was not afraid. However, the hearts of the Tianfeng Ridge prodigies sank to the bottom. Now, not only the Purple Smoke Ridge and the Yellow Dragon Ridge, but even the Yu family was targeting them. Yu Yuankue scanned the Tianfeng Ridge prodigies, and his gaze fell on Han Lingxian. When you fail, I'll let you know how powerful I am. Yu Yuankue said coldly. If Han Lingxian passed the selection and became a disciple of the academy, he naturally could not do anything to Han Lingxian. However, if Han Lingxian failed, even the Tianfeng Ridge Lord would not care about her. At that time, Yu Yuankue could use his family's power to take Han Lingxian. Feeling Yu Yuankue's wolf-like gaze, Han Lingxian could not help but retreat behind Yiguchen. It's best if you don't make a move, or you'll regret it for the rest of your life, Yiguchen said lightly. The moment he said that, everyone fell silent. Yu Shuangyan's cold eyes also turned to Yiguchen. Chapter 878. How dare he threaten the Yu family in front of Yu Shuangyan? Everyone's eyes fell on Yiguchen as if they were looking at a fool. Although Yu Shuangyan's personality was as cold as an iceberg, she had a strong sense of belonging to the Yu family. She was also very protective of the Yu family. Otherwise, she would not have targeted Yen worried guest. But now, Yiguchen actually dared to threaten Yu Yuankue in front of Yu Shuangyan. In everyone's eyes, this was no different from courting death. Dugu Wubai, shut up. Don't provoke her. Qin Paisai's expression changed. Yu Shuangyan was only targeting Yen worried guest. Yiguchen's words undoubtedly pulled the fire of war onto the people of Tianfeng Ridge. Are you threatening me? Yu Shuangyan's tone was extremely cold and indifferent. Her eyes fell on Yiguchen casually. A level 3 spiritual bridge of heaven and earth cultivation was nothing in her eyes. Correct. Yiguchen stood with his hands behind his back and a faint smile on his face. And it was a threat. Boom. A level 9 spiritual bridge of heaven and earth aura spread out from Yu Shuangyan's body. The aura was so oppressive that the people of Tianfeng Ridge could hardly breathe. Only Yiguchen stood there calmly. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his expression did not change. Very good. Remember your words. Yu Shuangyan did not say anything more and left directly. Yu Yuankue also sneered and glanced at Yiguchen and the others. Then, he followed Yu Shuangyan and left. Ha, Brother Qin, you're on your own this time. Purple Smoke Lord and Yellow Dragon Lord smiled and shook their heads. It seemed that they did not need to do anything. Tianfeng Ridge would be finished this time. Princess Qin, will wait for a good show. Zi Yusin, Huang Feiyun, and the others gloated. Then, they left as well. The people of Tianfeng Ridge were depressed. Some resentful gazes fell on Yiguchen. If not for Yiguchen's provocation, why would Yu Shuangyan care about small fries like them? Qin Paisai's entire body was drained of energy, and her beautiful face was ashen. She didn't even have the strength to scold Yiguchen. Qin Zhen didn't say a word, but he looked at Yiguchen with a hidden sharpness. It could be imagined that if the entire Tianfeng Ridge was annihilated this time, then Yiguchen, who had refined the spirit Bodhi, would not have a good ending. But in the face of Qin Zhen's threatening gaze, Yiguchen remained calm. Yiguchen did not have the strength. His provocation was indeed a suicidal one. Unfortunately, Yiguchen was only speaking the truth. Yu Shuangyan really didn't care about her. At this moment, the crowd's exclamations could be heard from afar. A group of people walked over, led by a well-dressed young man. He was handsome and tall, and had an extraordinary aura. It's Hua Xingjie from the Hua family, ranked 19th on the sword leaderboard. Rumor has it that he's the strongest person in the younger generation of the Hua family, after Hua Wuxiu, Han Lingxian said with respect. That was a form of respect for the strong. In Han Lingshuan's opinion, the top 20 geniuses on the sword leaderboard were almost at the top of the small group of people. The peak of the 9th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. Yi Guqin's eyes were deep. He had a grudge with Hua Xingjie from the Hua family, so it was hard to say whether he would have a conflict with Hua Xingjie. However, at this moment, there were suddenly exclamations of surprise. Hua Xingjie was actually walking towards the people of Tianfeng Ridge. What's going on? Everyone in Tianfeng Ridge was stunned. Was Hua Xingjie targeting Tianfeng Ridge because Tianfeng Ridge had rejected the Hua family's invitation? Thinking of this, Qin Paisai and the others turned pale and their legs almost gave out. Many people gathered around and looked at them. The closer they got, the more Yi Guqin could feel Hua Xingjie's extremely powerful genuine qi. No wonder he was a genius from a fake saint family. Tianfeng Ridge Lord, I won't interfere in your family's affairs. I just want to ask you something. I heard that there's a sword demon in Tianfeng Ridge who broke my brother's sword move. Where is he? Hua Xingjie's tone was indifferent. Even in front of Qin Zhen, who was a venerable, he was still very cold. The sword demon should be just passing by. He's not with us, Qin Zhen said indifferently. Really? What a pity that I can't subdue him personally. Hua Xingjie shook his head with pity. The moment these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. The name of the mysterious sword demon in Tianfeng Ridge had already spread across half of the sword dynasty. Many people thought that the mysterious sword demon's strength was enough to enter the top 10 of the sword ranking. He might even be a genius from some overlord forces who had come to the sword dynasty to gain experience. However, at this moment, Hua Xingjie actually said that he could subdue him personally. It was as if he could easily subdue the sword demon. Everyone in Tianfeng Ridge felt uncomfortable when they heard this. After all, the sword demon had become famous in Tianfeng Ridge and was considered half a genius of Tianfeng Ridge. If the sword demon was here, he wouldn't have the right to speak. Zuoqiu Qing muttered to herself. Hua Xingjie shook his head and left. Yi Guqin narrowed his eyes slightly and didn't act rashly. Then, some famous geniuses appeared again. For example, Yin Wufeng from the Yin family. He was dressed in a black robe and had a devilish face. He was ranked 23rd on the sword ranking, but he wasn't any weaker than Hua Xingjie. There was also a strange and cunning girl dressed in yellow with a scorpion tail braid. Some people recognized her. She was Shangguan Yan from the Shangguan family. She was ranked 25th on the sword ranking. In addition to these geniuses from sword clans, there were also some rogue geniuses on the sword ranking who were quite eye-catching. For example, Gue Jianchou and Yan Chou were very famous. The 5 Academy selection this time is really like a group of dragons crossing the river. Some lords sighed. At this moment, a supremacy suddenly descended from the sky and announced loudly, "Everyone, the 5 Academy selection has officially begun." This selection is divided into 3 stages. The 5 academies will be waiting for you in the last stage. It's finally begun. Hearing the elder's words, all the geniuses outside the sword venerable ruins were extremely excited. If they performed well in these 3 stages, they would definitely be noticed by the big shots of the 5 academies. In the future, if resources were gathered and trained, it was not impossible for them to become the sword sun. Because of this, all the geniuses' eyes were surging with the flames of battle. Only the geniuses from Skywind Ridge were dejected and had no confidence at all. The first stage is the 3 Gates of Heaven. It can be used to test your combat strength, sword Dao talent, and growth potential. This stage is the most basic test of your overall quality. If you can't stand out in this stage, then the next two stages will be difficult, the supremacy said. The three gates of heaven? Yi Guqin was still puzzled. Han Lingxian explained, the three gates of heaven are the gates of the Sword Venerable Ruins. There are three sky-piercing stone pillars inside that test your combat strength, talent, and potential. Many geniuses from the Sword Dynasty have been tested and left their names on the gates of heaven. I see. Yi Guqin nodded slightly. The thing he was least afraid of was this kind of test. Because even Yi Guqin himself did not know how monstrous his sword Dao cultivation and talent were. In short, it should not be too bad. Chapter 879. Not long after, all the geniuses outside the Sword Venerable Relic rushed into the basin. At the entrance of the ancient ruins stood three giant stone doors, which were over a few hundred zhang tall, giving off an imperious aura. The strangest thing was that there were countless glowing words on the stone doors. Every single word was a name. Some were dull and lifeless, while others were shining brightly. However, there were even some words that directly left the stone gate and floated above the stone gate like stars. The words that were shining with even more intense light were like the bright moon surrounded by stars. That's the three heavens gates. Only the real geniuses can leave their names on it. Han Lingxian raised her snow-white neck, and her beautiful eyes were filled with undisguised admiration. Are the three heavens gates so magical? Yi Guqin was surprised. Of course, but this test is only effective for those below the martial supremacy realm. After all, the owner of this relic, the Thunder Sword Venerable, is only a ninth heaven martial supremacy. Besides, it seems that only those who are ranked above the 1000th place will have their names appear on the stone doors. Yi Guqin nodded slightly. In simple terms, each of the three heavens gates could only leave 1,000 words. If there was a newcomer, the name of the previous person would be erased. In addition, the higher the ranking of the person, the brighter the light. The more powerful one's name could leave the stone doors and float above the stone doors like stars surrounding the moon. Yi Guqin glanced at the three stone doors and saw that there was a name on each of them. It floated at the top like a bright moon and the surrounding names were like stars surrounding it. There was a dazzling name floating above the heaven's gate that tested one's combat strength. Hua Wuxiu. Yi Guqin was familiar with this name. After all, he had cracked Hua Wuxiu's shadow sword move. However, it was obviously not enough to represent Hua Wuxiu's true strength. Yi Guqin looked sideways. There was also a name on the stone tablet that tested one's sword talent. Jian Jinghong. Second on the sword ranking, Jian Jinghong. Yi Guqin muttered to himself. Finally, Yi Guqin's gaze fell on the growth potential stone tablet. There was only one simple word, purple. The most mysterious number 1 on the sword ranking, purple. Yi Guqin's gaze was deep. He had also heard of the rumors of the first place on the sword ranking. This number 1 on the sword ranking never showed his true appearance to others. He wore a purple mask on his face and had long purple hair, so he was called Purple. While Yi Guqin was pondering, the other sky prides were also observing the three heavens gates. TSK, these three stone doors have been taken by the top 3 of the sword ranking. Do you think that someone will pull down the top 3 in this test and put them on top of their heads? How is this possible? Do you think the top 3 of the sword rankings can be casually shaken? Many geniuses were discussing. On the other side, Yushuang Yan, who had always been indifferent like an iceberg, could not help but stir up a faint wave when she looked at Hua Wuxiu's name. Hua Wuxiu was her dream and goal. Young Master Hua, Shuangyan doesn't ask to be by your side, as long as I can follow behind you. Yushuang Yan muttered to herself. Big brother, this time, my goal is also to strive for first place. Hua Xingjie was also burning with fighting spirit. Many sky prides had Hua Wuxiu, Jian Jinghong, and Purple as their goals. On the other hand, Yi Guqin did not have the top 3 on the sword ranking as his goal. Because in this world, the only person he needed to chase was himself. Dugu Wubai, you boasted before. If you can't leave your name on the heaven's gate, it will be too laughable. Su Wenbin seized the opportunity to attack. Han Lingshuan's gaze was also a little worried. Perhaps in terms of talent and comprehension, Yi Guchen would perform well, but in terms of combat strength and potential, Han Lingxian was really not confident. Yi Guchen did not say much, and could not be bothered to respond to Su Wenbin. Humph. Pretentious. Su Jingjing pursed her lips. The supremacy who presided over the selection shouted loudly, "Geniuses who want to participate in the selection may enter the Heaven's Gate. All 3 Heaven's Gates will be tested." Whoosh! As soon as the supremacy finished speaking, all the sky prides moved at the same time, turning into 3 torrents and entering the 3 Heaven's Gates. Yi Guchen also entered. As soon as Yi Guchen stepped into the Heaven's Gate, he felt as if he had passed through a layer of water curtain. The scene in front of him changed. A towering stone pillar seemed to be supporting the sky, and a heavy feeling pervaded the air. Yi Guchen looked around and realized that he was the only one around. "Everyone will be separated?" Yi Guchen muttered. However, on second thought, being separated would allow him to concentrate and unleash his full strength. Yi Guchen was the first to enter the Heaven's Gate to test his combat strength. Yi Guchen walked in front of the stone pillar and let out a deep breath. Since there was no one around, he could use his skills without any scruples. "Let's try the God Devourer sword," Yi Guchen muttered to himself. The primordial demon sword was the ultimate weapon that even the overlord-level forces coveted. Yi Guchen's energy reserve was still previously, so he could not use the God Devourer sword. Now, not only had he completely recovered, but he had also broken through to the heaven and earth spiritual bridge, so he chose to give it a try. Boom! Yi Guchen activated the limit of his energy reserve. After breaking through to the heaven and earth spiritual bridge, his energy reserve had really turned into a huge ocean, and liquid true energy was swirling like waves. Terrifying true energy was injected into the God Devourer sword. However, the God Devourer sword quivered slightly, then fell silent again. This. Yi Guchen was speechless for a moment. Ha, Yi Guchen, even if you break through to the heaven and earth spiritual bridge, you can't use the God Devourer sword for the time being. The primordial demon sword is not something that anyone can control. Su Qingyu's primordial spirit appeared. Then what should I do? Yi Guchen did not know much about the famed primordial demon sword. You're lucky that the God Devourer sword's spirit has acknowledged you. However, your cultivation is still too weak. You'll have to wait until you reach the divine dwelling stage before you can try to control the primordial demon sword. Also, after you recover your consciousness, you'll have to use your soul power to nourish the demon sword day and night. Also, you'll have to start looking for materials to refine your doppelganger. The God Devourer sword is a demon sword after all, and I'm afraid that it will affect you in the future, Su Qingyu said. Alright, then let's try the Khanate sword embryo. Yi Guchen was not discouraged. If the primordial demon sword was so easy to control, it would not be worthy of its name as an ultimate weapon. Yi Guchen's mind moved, and a palm-sized, sparkling and translucent sword embryo, like a beautiful jade, emerged from his dantian. The sword blade was filled with chaotic qi, as if it could cut through everything. Yi Guchen did not need to deliberately cultivate the sword embryo at all. The two were originally one. He controlled it like a fish in water. Then let's test my true strength. Yi Guchen formed a seal with his hands, and the ancient god form was activated. The cultivation of the level 3 heaven and earth spiritual bridge was fully activated. The concept of man and sword as one erupted. Terrifying qi was injected into the Khanate sword embryo. The entire Khanate sword embryo seemed to have turned into a beautiful 7-colored jade, rippling with light, and chaotic qi tumbling. Dugu's 9 swords, breaking sword style. Yi Guchen raised his hand, and the Khanate sword embryo burst out, tearing through the air and setting off violent waves. Chapter 880. This was the first time Yi Guchen had used his full strength after recovering his cultivation. Yi Guchen was able to fight against the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth when he was at the Great Mysterious Gate stage. If he went all out, he could even withstand the attack of a divine dwelling stage cultivator. But now, Yiguchen had broken through to the third level of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. How strong would his strength be? There were probably not many people in the spiritual bridge stage who could be his match. Therefore, Yiguchen wanted to measure his current strength. After the Khanate sword embryo returned to Yiguchen, it was like a fish back in water. Its power was even stronger than when it was controlled by Gu Xiaoyang. A terrifying chaotic sword aura emerged from the sword embryo. Along with the breaking sword style, it slashed at the stone pillar. Boom! An indescribable shock wave swept through the entire space. It was as if an ancient giant had stomped on the ground. At this moment, outside the heavenly gate, the lords and some people from the aristocratic families were paying attention. TSK, as expected of the pride of the Hua family. Hua Xingjia's name is in the top 50. Some people looked at the combat strength heavenly gate. A shining name was suspended above the heavenly gate like a star. Although it was far from Hua Wuxiu, who was ranked first, it was not bad. After all, the 3 heavenly gates had been tested for countless years. To be able to rank in the top 50 was already amazing. Sigh, I'm still a distance away from Big Brother. Hua Xingjie walked out of the heavenly gate and sighed when he saw his result. Then, Yushuang Yan's name also appeared, but she was ranked in the 80s. Young Master Hua, no one can surpass you. Yushuang Yan was not discouraged. Instead, she admired Hua Wuxiu even more. Then, Yin Wufeng, Shangguan Yan, and the other prodigies from the aristocratic families, as well as Gui Jianqiu, Yan Chou, and the other unaffiliated prodigies, walked out of the heavenly gate one by one. There was no lack of outstanding performances, and their names shone like stars. Rumble, at that instant, the gate of heaven, which was used to test one's strength, began to vibrate violently as rays of light were emitted from it. This is... Even the supremacy who was in charge of the selection was shocked. This was the first time the heavenly gates had such a strange reaction. What's going on? Hua Xingjie, Yushuang Yan, and the other geniuses were all surprised. The hearts of the other lords trembled slightly when they saw this. Could such a change be the birth of a peerless genius? Just as everyone was shocked beyond words, the heavenly gates suddenly fell silent again. What's going on? Everyone was puzzled. Within the heavenly gates, Yiguchen looked at the stone pillar that was covered with cracks and was slightly surprised. His strength was beyond his estimation. The towering stone pillar surged with brilliance and began to heal. That's it? Yiguchen was puzzled. This was because he heard from Han Lingxian that once the test was over, a light screen would automatically appear in front of the stone pillar, and he could write his name. Then, he would leave and be able to see his results in the heavenly gates outside. However, the stone pillar did not react at all. Is my strength not enough to enter the top 1,000? Yiguchen was slightly puzzled. Then, he directly exited the heavenly gates. He saw Han Lingxian and the people of Tianfeng Ridge in front of him. Young Master Dugu, you're out. Han Lingshuan's face was filled with joy. Yiguchen looked up and saw that Han Lingshuan's name was ranked about 600. To Han Lingxian, it was a pleasant surprise. The others, such as Qin Paisai, Su Wenbin, Su Jingjing, Zuoqiu Qing, Zhen Lang, and the others, were about 700 to 800. Dugu Wubai, I don't seem to see your name, Su Jingjing said with a half-smile. Forget it. Don't count on others. Zuoqiu Qing waved her hand. Qin Paisai did not even bother to look at Yiguchen. Yiguchen's combat strength was not even in the top 1,000, so what else could she count on? In her heart, she had long regarded Yiguchen as a swindler who was trying to cheat the sacred medicine. Young Master Dugu, don't mind it. In the following Sword Dao talent test, you definitely won't be weaker than others, Han Lingxian encouraged. She knew that Yiguchen's cultivation was only at stage 3, so he probably could not display much combat strength. However, in terms of Sword Dao talent, Han Lingxian had witnessed it with her own eyes. If he could easily comprehend the imperial sword steel, Yiguchen's sword Dao talent was definitely not weak. Yiguchen did not care about the cold looks of the Tianfeng Ridge prodigies and entered the second heavenly gate again. In the heavenly gate space, Yiguchen once again saw a stone pillar that reached the sky. And on this sky-piercing stone pillar, there were countless profound sword moves and martial arts. This was the test of sword Dao talent. Yiguchen sat cross-legged in front of the stone pillar and began to comprehend. In less than an hour, Yiguchen stood up and began to practice the moves. Like flowing clouds and flowing water, there was no delay at all, and there was even a faint concept emerging. This proved that not only had Yiguchen thoroughly comprehended the sword moves on the stone pillar, but he had also mastered them and reached the peak of perfection. The heavenly gate outside trembled once again, causing everyone to be extremely shocked. Could it be that the heavenly gate is broken? The supremacy presiding over the selection was also confused. In the past, such a special situation had never happened in the 3 heavenly gates. Yiguchen walked out of the heavenly gate again, but his name still did not appear on the heavenly gate. That young man came out quite quickly. Many people noticed Yiguchen. This was because the heavenly gate needed a certain amount of time to test one's talent. Most people were still comprehending in the heavenly gate space, and Yiguchen was the fastest to come out. No name appeared. It seems that this child has given up on comprehending. Seeing this, some lords shook their heads secretly. Yiguchen felt a sharp gaze looking at him. It was Qin Zhen. Yiguchen did not perform well twice, causing Qin Zhen to feel like he was being fooled by Yiguchen. Yiguchen was calm. He believed that there must be some kind of mystery in the heavenly gate. After that, the prodigies who underwent the talent test came out one after another. Hua Shengjie, Yin Wufeng, Shenguan Yan, Yushuang Yan, and the others' performances were still eye-catching. Gui Jianqiu, Yan Chou, and the others did well too. On Tianfeng Ridge's side, Han Lingxian once again entered the top 1,000. Yiguchen, what about you? You didn't gain anything again. Su Jingjing covered her mouth and sneered. This is impossible. Han Lingxian was extremely surprised. Even she was amazed by Yiguchen's talent in the sword Dao. How could he still not enter the top 1,000? Yiguchen did not explain. Even if he told the truth, the people of Tianfeng Ridge would probably take it as an excuse. Next was the final potential test. It could test a person's potential and how far they would grow in the future. Yiguchen entered the 3rd heavenly gate. As far as the eye could see, there was still a towering stone pillar. In front of the stone pillar, there was a gray futon. There was nothing to do in this round. All one had to do was sit on the futon and accept the potential test. Yiguchen sat cross-legged on the futon. Rays of light rose from the futon and turned into a ball of light, enveloping Yiguchen. The light seeped into Yiguchen's body. The ultimate sea of qi, the chaotic sea of consciousness, the connate sword embryo, the perfect physical body, and so on were all detected. The demonic heart flame and the purple void mystic bomb were also included. Even the enlightening ancient tree was detected. Of course, the core thunder tribulation sword and the god devourer sword were silent in the depths of his dantian and were not detected. Even so, part of the potential that Yiguchen had shown was enough to shock everyone. The heavenly gate outside trembled again. This time, just as Yiguchen got up to leave again, a light screen appeared in front of the stone pillar. Chapter 881. Is that so? Yiguchen came to a realization as he looked at the light screen that appeared in front of the sky-piercing stone pillar. So he can only leave his name after all 3 heavenly gates have been tested? But why aren't the others doing the same? Yiguchen shook his head and stopped thinking about these unnecessary questions. His eyes flickered slightly, then he raised his hand and used his fingers as a sword. True Qi gushed out. 2 words that contained peerless sharpness landed on the light screen. Yiguchen smiled faintly and walked out of the heavenly gate space. Outside the heavenly gate space, all the lords were paying attention to the heavenly gate. The prodigies who walked out of the heavenly gate space were also looking at their rankings nervously. Hua Shengjie, Yushuang Yan, Yin Wufeng, Shenguan Yan, and other prodigies were watching. Ghost Jianqiu, Yan Chok, and other prodigies were also watching. The lords were also looking for the results of their prodigies. Yi Guchen walked out of the heavenly gate and saw Su Wenbin, Su Jingjing, and the others looking at him with cold smiles. Qin Paisai was expressionless and did not look at Yi Guchen. Han Lingxian sighed and did not say anything. No rankings yet. Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows slightly. At this moment, the heavenly gate shook violently again. This time, it was not just one heavenly gate, but all three heavenly gates shook violently at the same time. At first, the shaking was limited to the three heavenly gates, then it began to spread everywhere. The entire sword supremacy ruins shook violently like the beating of a drum. The shaking was unprecedented. What the hell is going on? Even the venerable one who was in charge of the selection turned pale with fright and was at a loss. What's wrong? What happened? The lords and the geniuses were astounded. The three heavenly gates had never experienced such a change. Just then, one of the geniuses cast his gaze onto the heaven's gate that was used to test one's combat strength. An unprecedented radiance shone out from the heaven's gate before condensing into two gigantic words. Sword. Sword demon. That heaven's favorite stuttered out in shock. Boom. An incomparably dazzling brilliance burst forth from the combat strength heavenly gate. The two words, sword demon, rose into the air like a radiant sun, suspended above the heavenly gate, releasing endless light. Hua Wuxiu, who was ranked first in the heavenly gates in terms of combat strength, has been replaced, someone exclaimed. Everyone was shocked. How long had it been since the first place of the three great heavenly gates had changed? Hua Wuxiu had always been the strongest in the heavenly gate, but now, he had been replaced by the sword demon. That's impossible. Yushuang Yan's emotions were thrown into disbelief. The only person she admired in her heart, the high and mighty Hua Wuxiu, was actually suppressed by someone else. If Hua Wuxiu's reputation was like the bright moon, then the sword demon's reputation was like the blazing sun, hanging high above the bright moon. How is that possible? Big Brother's record has been broken. The sword demon is actually here. Hua Shengjie was also in disbelief. His gaze suddenly turned to the Tianfeng Ridge's side. Everyone at Tianfeng Ridge could not hide the shock in their hearts. The sword demon is actually here. It should be the sword demon. Who exactly is he? The Su siblings, Zuoqiu Qing, Zhen Lang, and the rest were all in disbelief. Han Lingshuan's heart skipped a beat. She glanced at Yi Guchen from the corner of her eye. Yi Guchen's expression was calm, and there was no expression on his face. Han Lingxian thought for a moment and shook her head. No matter how highly she thought of Yi Guchen, she could not associate him with the sword demon. After all, in the eyes of outsiders, the sword demon was someone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Hua Wuxiu. Sword demon, you're really here. On the other side, Yen Suk took a deep breath. The person he wanted to meet the most was the sword demon. Everyone present was shocked by this scene. However, it was not over yet. Rumble. The gate of heaven, which was used to assess talent, was still shaking violently. Under the gaze of countless people present, a name that was as dazzling as the sun once again surpassed Jian Jinghong, who was ranked first in talent. The sword demon had once again replaced Jian Jinghong in the talent assessment. Oh my god, he's ranked first in both gates. What kind of monster is the sword demon? Countless gasps could be heard from all directions. Hua Shengjie, Yushuang Yan, and the other prodigies from the aristocratic families widened their eyes. Just the fact that the sword demon was ranked first in terms of combat power was enough to shock them. Now, the sword demon's talent was ranked first as well. Countless people's hearts were shaken, and huge waves were set off. However, it was still not over yet. The gate of heaven, which was used to assess talent, rumbled and shook. No. It shouldn't be, countless people present looked at this scene and secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. There was a premonition in their hearts. There might really be a peerless monster in this 5 Academy selection. Rumble. An unprecedentedly intense light emerged from the third gate of heaven. The 2 words, Sword Demon, once again rose like the sun, suppressing the first name, Z, who was ranked first. At this moment, the 3 gates of heaven, as if resonating with each other, shook together and released a dazzling light. Above the 3 gates of heaven, the 3 names of the Sword Demon were like the sun, rising into the sky. The light shone in all directions and shook the heavens and earth. The 3 lights illuminated the world, shaking the Sword Dynasty. The whole place was dead silent, and everyone was shocked. The 2 words, Sword Demon, which were like iron hooks and silver paintings, bloomed with a peerless sharpness, as if it was announcing that a peerless sword prodigy would rise in the Sword Dynasty. His combat power surpassed Hua Wuxiu's. His talent surpassed Jian Jinghong's. His potential surpassed the prodigy Z. The top 3 on the sword ranking was suppressed by the Sword Demon alone. There were thousands of people present, but no one made a sound. The 2 words, Sword Demon, silenced the world. The 3 gates of heaven shook, and the 3 lights illuminated the world, causing the whole Sword Dynasty to feel it. Somewhere in the Sword Dynasty, in a pavilion, an extremely handsome young man sat alone in front of a chessboard, playing Go. Surprisingly, he held a white chess piece in one hand and a black chess piece in the other. He was playing Go with himself. At a certain moment, the young man suddenly sensed something and looked at the distant horizon. The Sword Dynasty is about to change. Another great dragon has entered the game, heh. The young man shook his head slightly. He held a chess piece in his hand and placed it down. The entire chessboard was filled with black and white sword chi, and it was about to become a dragon-slaying game. In a certain forbidden cultivation ground in the Sword Dynasty, countless sword chi surged out in all directions. A bare-chested young man sat cross-legged in the midst of countless sword chi, accepting the experience. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his face was as sharp as a knife. There was a sword mark between his eyebrows, and his temperament was wild and arrogant. Another opponent has appeared, but this time, Jian Jinghong will definitely get the Jiankui position. On top of a mountain, a figure looked at the distant horizon, looking at the 3 rising suns. That person wore a devilish purple mask on his face, and his striking purple hair fluttered in the wind. His hands were behind his back, and he had an awe-inspiring aura that made people feel intimidated. Interesting. The last person who triggered my battle intent was Di Haotian. I hope this person won't disappoint me. The person wearing the purple mask was the mysterious prodigy who ranked first on the sword ranking, Z. Chapter 882. In the Sword Supreme ruins, the 3 heavenly gates shook, and 3 lights illuminated the world. It could be said that it caused quite a stir in the entire Sword Dynasty. After all, the light emitted by the 2 words Sword Demon was too dazzling and intense. It hung high in the sky, and it was difficult not to notice it. In a bustling capital of the Sword Dynasty, a slender figure walked among the crowd. It was a middle-aged man with a handsome face and a cinnabar mole between his eyebrows. His robe was snow-white and spotless. His long black hair was casually draped over his shoulders, mixed with a few strands of white hair. There was a wine gourd on his waist and a red umbrella in his hand. Whether it was rain or shine, he carried it with him. At this moment, the man seemed to have sensed something and looked into the distance. At the end of the sky, 3 balls of light rose into the sky, illuminating all directions. 3 lights illuminate the world, the Sword Supreme Array. Is he also one of the choices of the 7th Sword Supreme Array Master, John Doe? Then, does he have the ability to help the Alliance Master escape? The incomparably handsome man murmured softly. Countless eyes in the entire Sword Dynasty looked at the Wind Thunder Ridge. In the Sword Supreme ruins. The shock on everyone's faces did not fade for a long time. The 2 words Sword Demon were like the blade of a sword, blooming with peerless sharpness. Sword Demon, the one who broke Hua Wuxiu's sword move in the Wind Ridge. Many people were shocked. Previously, the name, Sword Demon, was only known in half of the Sword Dynasty. After all, he only broke one of Hua Wuxiu's sword moves. No matter how strong he was, no one thought that he could surpass Hua Wuxiu. But now, the name, Sword Demon, overshadowed the three geniuses on the Sword Supreme array. How could they not be shocked? After today, the name, Sword Demon, would shake the entire Sword Dynasty. Who is the Sword Demon? Everyone's gaze swept back and forth between the two of them. Many people turned their attention to the Sky Wind Ridge and observed carefully. This was because the Sword Demon had first appeared in Tianfeng Ridge. However, they found that no one matched the image of the Sword Demon in their hearts. As for Yi Guqin, he was only at the third stage of the Heaven and Earth Spiritual Bridge. Being stared at by so many people, the Sky Prides of the Sky Wind Ridge broke out in cold sweat. They felt extremely pressured. Qin Paisai waved her hand and hurriedly said, "The Sword Demon has not been recruited by my Skywind Ridge. He is not one of them." That's true. If the Sword Demon is really in Tianfeng Ridge, why didn't he appear at the Sword Ranking Shrine that day? Zi Yusin and Huang Feiyun murmured. They were relieved. They were the ones who were most worried about the appearance of the Sword Demon. Fortunately, the Sword Demon did not join the Skywind Ridge camp. Who is the Sword Demon? Yu Shuangyan's face was as cold as ice. It was hard for her to accept that the Hua Wuxiu she admired in her heart had been overshadowed by another man. Yu Shuangyan had never seen the Sword Demon with her own eyes, so she doubted his strength. Since the Sword Demon is participating in the selection, he will show up sooner or later. I want to see what qualifications he has to suppress the top 3 Sky Prides of the sword ranking. Hua Xingjie's eyes were also filled with fighting spirit. He would not be too afraid if he had not seen the real power of the Sword Demon. Alright, everyone, the first stage is just a preliminary test. This stage will not eliminate anyone. Rest here for a day, and the second stage will begin tomorrow, the Supremacy who presided over the selection said loudly. Then, he went directly to the depths of the ruins to report this matter to the people of the 5 academies. Yi Guqin sat cross-legged on the ground and adjusted his breath. Now was not the best time to reveal the Sword Demon's identity. If he was exposed now, Yi Guqin would become a target for everyone. However, Yi Guqin wouldn't have to hide anything in the second or even the third round. So, he would be able to enter the 5 great academies directly when the time came. Young Master Dugu, the next stage is the real test. Han Lingxian looked worried. Don't worry, I will make sure you pass. Yi Guqin smiled faintly. Tisk, aren't you afraid of biting your tongue when you talk big? Su Jingjing and the others glanced at Yi Guqin. What right did someone who could not even make it into the top 1,000 of the 3 sky gates have to talk big? Do you think you are the Sword Demon? How dare you talk big? Su Wenbin sneered. Enough, don't say anything. Qin Paisai shouted. She was not in a good mood. In the second stage, they would be targeted by the Purple Smoke Ridge, Yellow Dragon Ridge, and even Yu Yuankoe. It was almost impossible for them to pass. Just as the Sky Prides outside were resting. In the depths of the ruins, above the sky, 5 huge flying ships were floating in the void. They were the members of the 5 academies. They were at the end of the last stage, waiting for the Sky Prides to arrive. However, the 3 brilliant lights just now had already shocked the people of the 5 academies. Who is the Sword Demon? No matter who he is, since he came to participate in the selection, he will definitely appear in the end. My Sun Moon College must get him. Come on, this Sword Demon, my Eternal Wind Academy is determined to win. Such a Sky Pride must have high standards. I'm afraid that only Tensei College, which is ranked first, can catch his eye. The gazes of some people from the academy shifted to the ship in the middle. Tensei College was the top of the 5 academies. It had many talents and resources. Hua Wuxiu, who was ranked 3rd on the sword roll, was a disciple of the Holy Emblem of Tensei College. On the flying ship of Tensei College, an old man in a black robe stood calmly. Behind him stood a young man with a broken arm. Yiguchin was no stranger to him. It was Hua Tengfei. He was also a disciple of Tensei College and had come to watch the competition. Elder Hua Mo, it seems that Tensei College will have another good seed this time. Some people from other academies laughed. The sword demon should know what the best choice is. Only my Tensei College can train him well. The elder of Tensei College named Hua Mo said calmly. He was not very happy about the appearance of the sword demon. Hua Mo was also a member of the Hua family. On the other hand, the sword demon had suppressed Hua Wuxiu on the heavenly gate. This made it difficult for Hua Mo to be happy. In his opinion, Hua Wuxiu should be the most dazzling sky pride. However, if the sword demon was sensible and joined Tensei College or the Hua family, Hua Mo would be willing to accept him. Do you want to recruit him to Tensei College or the Hua family? On another flying ship, an old man in a linen robe said indifferently. Bei Xian Elder, is Sacred Cliff College jealous? Hua Mo said with a fake smile. Sacred Cliff College was ranked last among the 5 major academies. Only a few of the top 20 sky prides on the sword ranking were from Sacred Cliff College. Moreover, Sacred Cliff College had the least number of sky prides in each of the 5 academy selections. Sacred Cliff College also wants to fight for the sword demon. Bei Xian Elder snorted coldly. How could such a sky pride be ranked last? Ridiculous. Elder Hua Mo flicked his sleeves and was not worried at all. On the other side, Mu Xingzu and the others were on the flying ship of Tianxian College. TSK. Who is the sword demon? He suppressed the top 3 on the sword ranking by himself. Could it be that another genius from an overlord-level force is here? Ying Lang exclaimed. The sword demon. Mu Xingzu murmured. Her eyes revealed a painful look of reminiscence. She remembered that in the Saint Origin dynasty, Yiguchin had killed hundreds of people in the sword realm of the void in order to protect her. He was also called the sword demon. Now, Mu Xingzu was reminded of the past and clenched her jade-like hands. No matter who it is, the title of the sword demon can only belong to senior brother Yi. No one else deserves to be called the sword demon. Chapter 883. A day passed in the blink of an eye. After some simple preparations, the prodigies of the 360 ridges welcomed the second round of selection. The supremacy who presided over the selection appeared again and explained the rules of the second round. The second round was called the Token Battle. There was a large forest in the Sword Venerable Ruins, which was a natural battlefield. There were also many monsters, various elixirs, and even sage-to-be elixirs. Of course, the most important thing was that every prodigy who entered the forest would receive a token. And in this round, only the prodigies who obtained 10 tokens could pass and enter the deepest part of the Honorable Sword Ruins to participate in the third round of the selection. This meant that for every Heaven's favorite who passes the test, at least 9 Heaven's favorites will be eliminated. There were about 5,000 to 6,000 people from the 360 ridges, including the prodigies from the aristocratic families and individual cultivators. In the end, only 500 to 600 people could pass the second stage. The passing rate was only about 1/10. It was indeed frighteningly low. No wonder the 5 academies of the Sword Dynasty are so famous. The selection is so strict, Yiguchin muttered to himself. However, it was also because of this that the 5 academies could become the cradle of Sword Dao elites. Alright, you can go to the forest now, but you have to enter separately, the supremacy said loudly. The reason for entering separately was to prevent people from teaming up at the beginning and eliminating powerful prodigies. Once they entered deep into the misty forest, it would naturally depend on their own luck. Be careful in the forest. Zi Yusin looked at them mockingly. See you in the forest. Huang Feiyun also had a playful smile on his face. The prodigies of the Skywind Ridge all had ugly expressions. They could pass the first round safely, but they were destined to be intercepted by the 2 ridges in the second round. In the previous 5 Academy selections, the Skywind Ridge was completely wiped out in the second round and did not even make it to the third round. Dugu Wubai, remember your promise, Qin Zhen said in a deep voice. Yi Guqin smiled and did not say anything. You're still pretending at this time. The Su siblings shook their heads secretly. The forest was located in the basin, behind the 3 sky gates. In less than 15 minutes, everyone arrived at the outskirts of the misty forest. Yi Guqin looked into the distance and saw a lush forest that stretched as far as the eye could see. Thick white fog, like smoke and clouds, filled the entire forest. Even deeper in, one could vaguely see the undulating mountain range, and the sound of thunder could be heard. That damaged heavenly tribulation weapon must be in the 3rd stage, Yi Guqin thought to himself. He participated in the 5 Academies selection to enter the 5 Academies. But if he could get a quasi-tribulation weapon along the way, it wouldn't be bad either. Alright, you have 7 days to walk through the misty forest. If you haven't walked out in 7 days, or if you haven't obtained 10 tokens, it will be considered a failure. In addition, once you enter the misty forest, your life cannot be guaranteed. If you are timid, you can choose to withdraw. The Venerable One said indifferently. What the 5 great academies wanted were geniuses with strong wills who were not afraid of death. She was not a flower in a greenhouse. Therefore, in this selection, they would not guarantee their safety. If they were surrounded and killed by other geniuses, their deaths would be in vain. As soon as this was said, most of the geniuses' expressions did not change. A small number of geniuses' eyes flickered slightly, but in the end, they chose to stay. Yi Guqin looked around and nodded secretly. The Sword Dynasty was indeed the first dynasty. Not many of these geniuses of the younger generation flinched. Then, Yi Guqin and the others split up and entered the misty forest. Even if they were from the same mountain range, it was impossible to gather in a group at the beginning. As soon as Yi Guqin entered the forest, he felt the temperature around him become cold. There was heavy fog around him. What was more surprising was that this fog had the effect of isolating the perception of the divine soul. In other words, if someone attacked from behind at this time, it would be difficult to detect. Yi Guqin's sea of consciousness had not recovered, so it was difficult for him to mobilize too much divine soul power. Under the restriction of the fog, it was even more limited. However, with Yi Guqin's current strength, there were probably not many people who could hurt him, even if it was a sneak attack. Yi Guqin went straight into the forest. Swoosh! A black shadow shot towards Yi Guqin like an arrow. Yi Guqin did not use his sword. Instead, he used his fingers as a sword, and sword chi gushed out from his fingertips. The 6-pulse divine sword was displayed. As the light from his finger dispersed, the black shadow was immediately split into 2. It was a dark poisonous snake. 5th rank monster beast. Yi Guqin did not even look at it and continued to move forward. Ordinary 5th rank monsters were only equivalent to the life and death chamber. Peak 5th rank monsters were comparable to the heaven and earth bridge. 6th rank monsters were equivalent to the divine dwelling stage. But until now, Yi Guqin had not encountered a 6th rank monster beast. Just as Yi Guqin was about to continue moving forward, his footsteps suddenly stopped. Swoosh! A dazzling sword light suddenly stabbed towards Yi Guqin's back. Yi Guqin turned sideways and reached out to grab the sword. You're courting death. A cold snort sounded. Clang! However, the result was that Yi Guqin tightly grasped the sword with one hand. How is this possible? The young man who attacked with the sword was in disbelief. His sword was a divine weapon with mystical runes and could cut through iron like mud. How could it be blocked with one hand? Yi Guqin's ancient god power surged in his arm and crushed the sword with a crack. He punched the young man's chest and sent him flying while vomiting blood. At this time, 2 more sword lights, one from the left and one from the right, stabbed towards Yi Guqin. Obviously, these 3 people were the prodigies of the ridge. They had gathered together and attacked at the same time to steal the other person's token. Yiguchin reached out with both hands and grabbed the two sword lights. Who are you? A prodigy on the sword list? One of the young men was shocked. Impossible, you're only at the 3rd stage. Another young man was in disbelief. The 3 of them were all at the 5th stage of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth. How could they lose to a 3rd stage spirit bridge of heaven and earth? Ignorant. Yiguchin struck out with a backhand attack, sending the 2 of them flying. The 3 of them rolled into a ball. Their chests were in pain and they could not gather their true chi. Hand over your tokens or die. Yiguchin did not want to waste time talking. He was not a kind person. Here. Here. The 3 of them did not dare to act rashly and handed over their tokens. There were 5 tokens in total. Obviously, in addition to their own tokens, they had obtained 2 more tokens. Yiguchin took the tokens and left. Looking at Yiguchin's back, the 3 young men swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Their eyes were still filled with fear. Damn it, we've hit a wall this time. Who is this person? How can he be so powerful? One of the young men said angrily. Do you think he's the sword demon? Another young man said with lingering fear. How is that possible? He's only at the 3rd stage of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth. It's just that his body is abnormally strong. Let's go. It's good enough that he spared our lives. Let's go rob the others. The remaining young man sighed. Things like this were happening all over the misty forest. Many sky prides who had been keeping a low profile began to show off their strength, displaying strength that shocked everyone. Chapter 884. After that, another 2 days passed. Yiguchin did not meet anyone from Tianfeng Ridge, nor did he meet anyone from Purple Smoke Ridge or Yellow Dragon Ridge. After all, the entire maze forest was quite large, so it was impossible to meet them all at once. In these 2 days, Yiguchin also met many prodigies. Of course, these prodigies were like chickens and dogs in front of him, unable to withstand a single blow. Yiguchin quickly collected enough tokens. 21 tokens. Yiguchin counted his gains. He only needed to walk out of the maze forest to pass the level. However, at that moment, Yiguchin suddenly sensed a strong fluctuation of spirit energy. Could it be a quasi-sage medicine? Yiguchin raised his eyebrows slightly. His figure flashed, and there was a lush forest in front of him. Vaguely, there was a strong spirit energy dissipating, and there was also the sound of water splashing. A spirit spring? Yiguchin was slightly surprised. Yiguchin was about to go forward to investigate when suddenly, a bald head jumped out of the bushes. There were 9 marks on the bald head, shining brightly and reflecting light. Yiguchin focused his gaze and found that it was a little monk who looked to be about 12 years old. He was wearing a monk's robe, and his face was chubby. He even looked a little cute. However, at that moment, the little monk had a perverted smile on his face. His mouth was open, and saliva was dripping from the corner of his mouth as he stared at the spirit spring. In the depths of the spirit spring, a beautiful figure in yellow was sitting cross-legged and absorbing spirit energy. The rising spirit missed what the girl's dress, outlining the beautiful lines that would make one's imagination run wild. It was obvious that the little monk was lustful about something. Yiguchin's eyes dimmed. Suddenly, a faint blazing color appeared on the back of his hand. A golden sword mark faintly appeared. This is the sword sect sequence emblem. Why? Yiguchin frowned, full of doubts. Why would the sequence emblem have such a strange reaction? Could it be? Yiguchin suddenly looked at the young monk. The little monk seemed to have sensed something as well. He raised his meaty hand and turned his gaze towards Yiguchin. Rustle, the little monk's actions made a sound. Who is it? The yellow-clothed girl abruptly opened her eyes. Her pretty face was flushed with shame and anger. She was the proud daughter of the Shengguan clan, Shengguan Yan. He was also one of the outstanding geniuses in the selection of the 5 academies. Oh my god! The small monk jumped 3 feet high and hurriedly ran towards Yiguchen. You perverted little monk, you still want to run? Shangguan Yen saw that shiny forehead, and her delicate body flashed as she flew over. Just as the little monk was about to escape, a flying sword landed in front of him, blocking his path. You've been peeping. Shangguan Yan's body was boiling with true qi, evaporating the water on her clothes. She gnashed her teeth and fiercely glared at the little monk. Ba. Lady Benefactor, this little monk was secretly protecting you so that you wouldn't be harmed by a sneak attack. The little monk put his palms together in a solemn manner. However, his eyes were slightly sneaky as they swept over Shangguan Yan's beautiful chest. You perverted little monk, you need to be taught a lesson. Shangguan Yan raised her eyebrows and stretched out her jade-like hand. The flying sword landed in her hand and she stabbed it towards the little monk. Big brother, save me. The little monk's chubby cheeks trembled. His figure flashed and he landed beside Yiguchen. Yiguchen frowned slightly, but he didn't say anything. You're also with this perverted monk? Shangguan Yan glanced at Yiguchen. A third stage heaven and earth spirit bridge was no threat. No. Yiguchen answered honestly. Big brother, you can't treat your little brother like this. The little monk said with tears in his eyes. He looked like an abandoned child. However, Yiguchen felt that the little monk was not simple. If you're not, then get out of the way. I'm going to teach this little pervert a lesson. Shangguan Yan shouted. Ba. This little monk is being kind and secretly protecting Lady Benefactor. How can you slander me like this? The little monk had a compassionate look on his face. However, no matter how he looked at it, he felt like he was asking for a beating. That's enough. He's just a child. Yiguchen lightly shook his head. It wasn't that Yiguchen was being kind. It was that the little monk was able to cause a reaction from the sword sex sequence emblem. This made Yiguchen somewhat curious. When two sword sect sequence emblems met, the sequence emblem would indeed react. However, the reaction caused by the little monk was not that kind of reaction. This was what made Yiguchen curious. Do you think I'll let him go just because you said so? Shangguan Yan did not say anything more. In her opinion, there was no need to waste words with someone at the third stage of the heaven and earth spirit bridge. The aura of the ninth stage of the heaven and earth spirit bridge erupted from Shangguan Yan's delicate body. The Shangguan family was also a fake sage family in the Sword Dao Alliance. Its foundation was not inferior to the Hua family. Pear Blossom Rain Sword. Shangguan Yan pointed her sword. The sword light was like a rain of flowers, covering Yiguchen and the little monk. Yiguchen flipped his wrist and took out his long sword. His eyes flashed and the aura of the third stage erupted. However, the vigorous fluctuation of true qi was not much weaker than that of the ninth stage. What's going on? Shangguan Yan's pretty face changed. She had never imagined that the true qi of Yiguchen's third stage cultivation would be more vigorous than her ninth stage true qi. After breaking through the heaven and earth spirit bridge, the true terror of the ultimate sea of qi was revealed. Yiguchen's sword resonated with the void. He directly used the ultimate move of the Great Void Sword Wave, the Void Destruction. Rumble. The two sword moves collided. Shangguan Yan's delicate body retreated continuously. Her big eyes were filled with horror as she looked at Yiguchen. She was one of the most dazzling geniuses in the 5 Academy selection. However, she was defeated by a nameless youth. However, there were always some dark horses in the 5 Academy selection. Shangguan Yan was not too surprised. Who are you? Shangguan Yan's eyes were filled with shock. Dugu Wubai, Yiguchen said indifferently. Dugu Wubai, I'll remember you. Shangguan Yan looked deeply at Yiguchen. Then she stared fiercely at the little monk. And you little pervert, I'll teach you a lesson sooner or later. After saying that, Shangguan Yan tapped the ground with the tip of her foot. Her body was as light as a swallow as she flew away. Big brother, you're too powerful. I admire you. The little monk's eyes sparkled as he stared at Yiguchin. Who are you? Yiguchin asked indifferently. My name is Kong Kong. The little monk scratched his head and said with a simple and honest smile. However, after seeing Kong Kong's character, Yiguchin did not think that he was a simple and honest person. Where are you from? This was what Yiguchin was most interested in. He wanted to understand why Kong Kong would cause the sequence insignia to react. I came from where I should come from and went to where I should go. Kong Kong pretended to be profound. Speak human language, Yiguchin said indifferently. He would not be fooled by Kong Kong. Ahem. I'm sure you've heard of my senior brother. I follow him, Kong Kong said. Who's your senior brother? Yiguchin raised his eyebrows. Sword monk, Xuanlian, Kong Kong said. Fourth on the sword ranking, sword monk Xuanlian. Yiguchin's eyes flashed. Chapter 885. Yiguchin had learned about the sword ranking before. The genius ranked fourth on the sword ranking was called Xuanlian, who was also known as the sword monk. He was also a rising genius who had defeated many geniuses on the sword ranking and jumped to fourth place. Yiguchin did not expect Kong Kong to be the sword monk Xuanlian's junior brother. Do you know about the sword faction? Yiguchin asked. Who doesn't know about the sword faction in the Nantian region? Kong Kong said. You're not from the Nantian region. Yiguchin's eyes flashed. My senior brother and I came from the West Brilliance region, Kong Kong said. One of the 9 regions, the West Brilliance region. Yiguchin looked thoughtful. It seems that to really understand the abnormal reaction of the sequence insignia, I still need to find the sword monk Xuanlian. I heard that Xuanlian is studying at Sacred Cliff College, one of the 5 major colleges, Yiguchin muttered to himself. This time, Kong Kong probably wanted to pass the selection and join Sacred Cliff College with his senior brother. Even so, Yiguchin made up his mind. Anyway, for him, as long as he had enough resources, it did not matter which college he joined. After all, Yiguchin did not need the guidance of a so-called famous teacher. Not to mention that he had Su Qingyu, a heavenly tribulation saint, who was more qualified to teach him than any other famous teacher. Be careful. Goodbye. Yiguchin was about to leave. Hey, wait. I think we're fated to be together. Kong Kong hurriedly ran to Yiguchin and said shamelessly. Your strength is not bad. Yiguchin took a deep look at Kong Kong. He looked no more than 12 years old, but his cultivation was at the 5th stage of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. With such talent, he could be considered a monstrous genius. Yiguchin also felt that Kong Kong's constitution was not ordinary. It was very likely that he was also a genius above the 7th stage. I'm not as strong as you, big brother. From now on, you're my big brother, and I'm your little brother. How could Kong Kong let go of the opportunity to cozy up to Yiguchin? He shamelessly followed him. Up to you. Yiguchin did not care. He was also very curious. What was the relationship between the Xuanlian and Kong Kong from the Western Brilliance domain and the sword faction? Where did the abnormal movement of the sequence insignia come from? However, in order to solve this mystery, he still needed to find the Xuanlian. Yiguchin had a feeling that if he found Xuanlian, he might be able to learn some of the true secrets and truths of the sword sect. On the following day, Yiguchin and Kong Kong walked together in the misty forest. With the 2 of them working together, they had already collected over 40 tokens. Even if they ignored the 10 tokens that Kong Kong had, Yiguchin still had over 30 tokens left. TSK, Tianfeng Ridge is really miserable. They were forced into a valley by the people of Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge. There is no way out. Yeah, some of the nearby geniuses have gone to watch the show. Let's go and have a look too. In the misty forest, 2 young men walked together and talked to each other. Where is that valley? Suddenly, a cold voice sounded. The 2 young men suddenly stopped. 2 figures appeared in the mist in front of them. It was Yiguchin and Kong Kong. Ha, another prey has come to our door. The two young men sneered when they found that Yiguchen and Kong Kong were at stage 3 and stage 5 respectively. They did not hesitate and attacked directly. In the misty forest, everyone was an enemy except for their companions. Boom! Boom! However, in just a few breaths, the two young men were beaten to the ground. Their noses were bruised and their faces were swollen. They coughed up blood. Damn! Damn it, who are you? The two young men were terrified. A stage 3 heaven and earth bridge youth was so strong that they were shocked. Ha, how dare you provoke my big brother? Are you looking for death? Kong Kong was a monk, but he was smirking. Where are the people of Tianfeng Ridge? Yiguchen asked coldly. In the valley 100 miles away. The two young men trembled. After Yiguchen took their tokens, he went to the valley with Kong Kong. The two young men looked at Yiguchen's back and looked at each other. There was still fear in their eyes. Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge are in trouble this time, in a deep valley in the misty forest. A group of people were hiding inside. They were the people of Tianfeng Ridge. Qin Paisai, Su Wenbin, Su Jingjing, Zuoqiu Qing, and Zhen Lang were all there. However, Han Lingxian was not there. At this moment, all of the Sky Prides from the Skywind Ridge were covered in bruises and injuries. Damn it! Our Skywind Ridge has lost more than 10 people. Zuoqiu Qing gritted her teeth. Her shoulder was also bleeding. After entering the misty forest, Qin Paisai and the others tried their best to gather everyone together. As for Yiguchen, because of his performance in the 3 heavenly gates and his stage 3 cultivation, Qin Paisai and the others did not take him seriously. They did not take the initiative to find Yiguchen. After gathering, Qin Paisai and the others moved together to take the tokens. However, they were still found by the people of Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge. Not only did they form an alliance, but Yu Yuankui also joined in. In the end, they forced the people of Tianfeng Ridge into this valley. Sister Lingxian lured Yu Yuankui away for us, but we can't escape from danger. Qin Paisai gritted her teeth, tears in her eyes. In order to share the pressure of Tianfeng Ridge, Han Lingxian lured the strongest person, Yu Yuankui, away with herself. Even so, the people of Tianfeng Ridge were still forced into a desperate situation by the people of Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge. Qin Paisai had never felt so powerless before. Are we going to die here? Zhen Lang's face was also very ugly. Killing was not forbidden in the misty forest. If Zi Yusin and Huang Feiyun were determined to kill them, the people of Tianfeng Ridge would very likely be wiped out. Humph, that Yiguchen said he would protect us. Where is he hiding now? Su Jingjing bit her lips so hard that they were about to bleed. The fear of death made her body tremble. I already said that he was unreliable. We are finished now. Su Wenbin's face was also ashen. At this moment, outside the valley, Zi Yusin and Huang Feiyun stood indifferently. Behind them stood 4 geniuses of the sword roll, Gong Yangming, Nie Qian, Zhong Yan, and Zhao Yifeng. In addition, there were more than 30 geniuses from the 2 ridges combined. This was an overwhelming force. At least, Tianfeng Ridge was almost powerless in front of this force. Putting everything else aside, just the 4 geniuses of the sword roll were enough to defeat all the geniuses of Tianfeng Ridge. TSK, Tianfeng Ridge is really miserable. In the past, they were always targeted by the 2 ridges. I think Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge are serious this time. They want to completely destroy the younger generation of Tianfeng Ridge. Who can stop the 4 geniuses of the sword roll? Around the secluded valley, many people also cast their gazes over. Tianfeng Ridge was surrounded by 2 ridges, so there was no lack of spectators. They all wanted to know how miserable Tianfeng Ridge would be in the end. Chapter 886. Ha, what a pathetic bunch of rats. Huang Feiyun's expression was calm and indifferent. It was as if victory was already in his grasp and everything was within his control. Let's not waste any more time. A trapped beast will still fight. Zhi Yusin sneered. What can they do with the 4 prodigies of the sword roll here? Huang Feiyun sneered. The 4 prodigies of the sword roll stepped out at the same time, and a terrifying wave of genuine qi surged out. Gong Yangming, who was ranked 75th, was already at stage 8 of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. The remaining prodigies, Nie Qian, Zhong Yan, and Zhao Yifeng, were all at stage 7. On the other hand, the prodigies of the Skywind Ridge were mostly at stage 5 or stage 6. In terms of martial techniques, the prodigies of the Skywind Ridge were no match for the prodigies of the Sword Roll. Zhi Yusin, Huang Feiyun, are you really going to kill the Skywind Ridge? Qin Paisai and the others stood at the entrance of the valley, their faces dark and gloomy. If you knew this would happen, why did you seek refuge with the Hua family? Is it that difficult? Huang Feiyun said indifferently. The current sword alliance has been turned into a mess by those aristocratic families. My father will absolutely not rely on those aristocratic families that cause chaos. Qin Paisai gritted her teeth tightly as she spoke. How dare you? Zhi Yusin shouted. Nie Qian, one of the 4 geniuses on the sword roll, smirked coldly. She slapped the air with her jade-like hand, and a powerful force landed on Qin Paisai's face, sending her flying. She coughed up blood. Princess. The prodigies of the Skywind Ridge were all shocked. Qin Paisai's face turned purple. She wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and looked coldly at Huang Feiyun, Zhi Yusin, and the others. Huang Feiyun's eyes flashed, and he said, I'm not a heartless person. If anyone is willing to seek refuge with us, I'm willing to accept them. Of course, this is your only chance. If you miss it, then, none of you will be left alive. His cold voice resounded throughout the valley. Some of the prodigies who were watching the show shrunk their necks. Huang Feiyun and Zhi Yusin were truly ruthless and decisive. Of course, no one said anything, and no one was willing to lend a helping hand in the face of injustice. In the Sword Dynasty, the strong were respected, not to mention that participating in the selection of the 5 academies was life-threatening. Many people looked at the Tianfeng Ridge camp, wondering what they would choose. Many of the Sky Prides from Skywind Ridge gritted their teeth, and some of their expressions changed. Especially the 2 siblings, Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing. They definitely didn't want to die here. In the end, after struggling for a while, the Su siblings looked at each other and walked toward Huang Feiyun. Young Master Su, what are you doing? Qin Paisai asked in disbelief. Su Wenbin had been pursuing her and had always maintained a good image in front of her. But now, Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing were planning to defect to the enemy. Princess, life is the most important thing in this world. Why throw away your life for nothing? I advise you to surrender as well. Keeping your life is the most important thing. On the brink of death, Su Wenbin could no longer maintain his disguise. Although he wanted to win Qin Paisai's favor, if he lost his life, he would be neglecting the essentials. Some of the other Sky Prides from Skywind Ridge also walked out with the Su siblings. A wise man submits to circumstances. Don't worry, when the new lord takes over Skywind Ridge, your Su family will remain the same. Huang Feiyun laughed. Thank you, young Master Huang. Su Wenbin cupped his hands and bowed deeply to Huang Feiyun and Zhi Yusin. You. Qin Paisai was so angry that her face turned pale. Only Zuoqiu Qing, Zhen Lang, and a few other Sky Prides were left beside her. Don't waste your breath. This bitch is as stubborn as her father. Attack, Zhi Yusin said coldly. Kill. The 4 Sky Prides from the sword ranking didn't attack, but the Sky Prides from Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge attacked together. Young Master Su, since you've chosen our side, shouldn't you make some contributions? Huang Feiyun said playfully as he looked at Su Wenbin and the others. This. Alright. Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing's expressions changed. After gritting their teeth, they didn't hesitate and attacked their comrades who had been on the same side. Su Wenbin, Su Jingjing, you bastards, this princess really misjudged you. Qin Paisai's voice was mournful and shrill as she shouted. Her beautiful eyes were bloodshot. Boom! Su Jingjing's palm landed on Qin Paisai's chest, causing her to spit out blood. She said indifferently, I'm sorry, Princess Qin. We just want to live. We've been blind to be on the same side as you bastards. Zuoqiu Qing raised her sword and attacked valiantly. Unfortunately, she couldn't do anything. After being pushed back by Su Wenbin, she was suppressed by the sky prides from the two ridges. Qin Paisai and the others were in danger. Puff! After another collision, Qin Paisai's blood and qi surged in her chest. She spat out a mouthful of blood. Don't move. Let me deal with her personally. Zi Yusin twisted her waist and rushed toward the seriously injured Qin Paisai. Her jade-like hands were fierce and attacked Qin Paisai's face. One could imagine that if this attack hit, Qin Paisai's head would definitely explode like a watermelon. Am I going to die? I can't accept this. Qin Paisai bit her lip until it bled. Facing Zi Yusin's killing move, she only felt bitterness in her heart. She closed her eyes and endured it. However, death didn't come as she expected. She heard the exclamations of the surrounding crowd. She also heard Zi Yusin's surprised exclamation. Qin Paisai slowly opened her eyes. A slender and skinny figure stood in front of her, blocking her path. With one hand, he grabbed Zi Yusin's wrist that was attacking him. Zi Yusin struggled in that person's hand like a caught chick. It's Dugawubai. Qin Paisai's eyes slowly focused. When she saw that calm face, Qin Paisai's brain short-circuited for a moment. Dugawubai had come to save her. It's you. Zi Yusin looked at the youth who suddenly blocked in front of her and suddenly understood. She had seen this person at the Swordless Temple. However, he was only at the third stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. He didn't attract any attention at all. But now, Zi Yusin's killing move was easily blocked by Yi Guqin. You guys are really courting death. Yi Guqin's palm grabbed Zi Yusin's wrist. Ancient god power surged as he fiercely squeezed. Ah! A shrill scream came out from Zi Yusin's mouth. Her wrist was directly broken by Yi Guqin. Zi Yusin's delicate body retreated. Her beautiful face was distorted because of the pain. She stared at Yi Guqin with resentment. She didn't believe that Yi Guqin would be so strong. She only thought that Yi Guqin had launched a sneak attack. Dugawubai, what are you doing here? Hurry up and leave. Qin Paisai gritted her teeth and said. She didn't think that Yi Guqin could change anything by coming here. At most, he would save another life. I never go back on my words. Yi Guqin's mouth curved into a cold arc. The origin ring on his fingertip flashed and a sword light appeared. With a sword in hand, all sides bowed. Chapter 887. Yi Guqin had a slender figure and wore a black robe. He held a sword in one hand and pointed it at the ground, while the other hand was behind his back. His expression was cold and indifferent. The blade reflected the sharpness of the sword. It was the aura of a Sword Dao Grandmaster. The Purple Smoke Ridge, the Yellow Dragon Ridge, the Sky Wind Ridge, and all the spectating prodigies were stunned by this sudden scene. Originally, everyone thought that the Skywind Ridge would be wiped out and no one would survive. But at the last moment, Yi Guqin appeared. What everyone found strange wasn't Yi Guqin's actions, but his cultivation. What could a third-stage Heaven and Earth Bridge cultivator do in this situation? Aside from the 30 to 40 prodigies from the Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge, there was also Zi Yusin and Huang Feiyun. Most importantly, there was also Gong Yangming and the other 3 prodigies from the sword ranking. This was a situation that was practically set in stone, and almost no one could shake it. Everyone was curious. What gave this black-robed youth the confidence to stand out at this moment? Dugu Wubai, go. Don't stay here. Go find Sister Lingxian. Qin Paisai bit her lips and shouted. She thought that Yi Guqin was a liar who cheated her father of the spirit Bodhi. But Qin Paisai was still kind and didn't want Yi Guqin to die in vain. She wanted him to go find Han Lingxian. Han Lingxian, what's wrong? Yi Guqin's eyes darkened. Han Lingxian had been of great help to him. Previously, at the Skywind banquet, she had even knelt down and begged Qin Zhen to help Yi Guqin obtain the spirit Bodhi. If something happened to Han Lingxian, Yi Guqin wouldn't be at ease. Ha, you still have the time to care about others. I'm afraid that woman has already been subdued by young Master Yu. Huang Feiyun revealed a meaningful smile. Boom. Just as Huang Feiyun finished speaking, a terrifying blood-colored killing intent swept out from Yi Guqin's body like a storm. The surrounding temperature seemed to have dropped to the freezing point. This scene caused the expressions of all the Sky Prides to change slightly. What a strong killing intent. It seems that the black-robed young man is not ordinary. He's clearly only at stage 3, but that killing intent made me feel terrified. Some of the Sky Prides who were watching from afar felt a chill run down their spines. Do you really think that I won't kill you? The sword in Yi Guqin's hand was buzzing and trembling, as if it could not help but thirst for blood. You're just a third-stage prodigy, yet you dare to talk about killing me? If it weren't for your sneak attack, how could I have been injured? Zi Yusin glared at Yi Guqin with incomparable resentment. Even Su Wenbin, Su Jingjing, and the others thought that Yi Guqin was overestimating himself. Trying to be a hero at this time was simply courting death. Yi Guqin did not say a word. His eyes were as cold as the moon setting and the crows crying. Go! Zi Yusin coldly shouted. A total of 30 to 40 Sky Prides from the Violet Smoke Ridge and the Yellow Dragon Ridge surrounded Yi Guqin's group. Among them, the weakest was at the 4th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spiritual Bridge. Most of them were at the 5th stage or 6th stage. With so many people surrounding them, even the weaker Sky Prides on the sword ranking would not be able to withstand it. Retreat! Qin Paisai, Zhuo Qiuqing, and the others' faces changed. They only had 6 or 7 people left, and they were all injured. It was impossible for them to break out of the encirclement. With Big Brother Dugu here, don't worry, don't worry. At some point, a little monk stood beside Qin Paisai and the others and laughed. Who are you? Qin Paisai and the others could not help but retreat. They had not noticed this little monk at all. I'm Big Brother Dugu's little brother, Kong Kong. Kong Kong put his palms together. However, no one from the Skywind Ridge was in the mood to pay attention to this little monk. Just as Qin Paisai was about to lead the remaining Sky Prides to attack with Yi Guqin, screams of agony rang out continuously. Then, Qin Paisai, Zhuo Qiuqing, and the others saw an unforgettable scene. Yi Guqin was dressed in black, and the sword in his hand vibrated. He took a step forward and appeared so close yet so far. Every time he landed beside a Sky Prides, there would be blood splattering and screams of agony would be heard. Yi Guqin, alone with his sword, seemed to have transformed into thousands of people as he swept through the area. In front of his sword, there was no difference between the 4th stage, 5th stage, and 6th stage Sky Prides. All the Sky Prides were like cabbages in his hands, and he could cut them down at will. Slash! Yi Guqin swung his sword, and a severed arm flew out. Slash! Yi Guqin's sword vibrated, and it pierced through the heart of a Sky Pride. Slash! Yi Guqin's sword swept across, and a head flew out. Everyone's minds went blank. Qin Paisai opened her mouth in a daze. The scene in front of her made her heart tremble. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Zhuo Qiuqing and the others were also stunned. Zi Yusin and Huang Feiyun were also petrified, and their minds seemed to have been struck by lightning. It felt as if they were a little white rabbit a moment ago, and the next moment, they had become a white tiger. This sudden turn of events stunned everyone present. A 3rd stage Heaven and Earth Bridge Sky Prides killed a group of 4th stage, 5th stage, and 6th stage sky prides, and blood splattered everywhere. No, how could that Dugawubai? Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing were also stunned, and they could not recover for a long time. Ah, devil, he's a devil. Run. Finally, after Yi Guqin killed more than 15 people in a row, the remaining 2 sky prides could not withstand the pressure of death and fled in all directions. Damn it, all of you come back. Huang Feiyun's face was ashen as he shouted coldly. His gaze was fixed on Yi Guqin. At this moment, everyone knew that although the young man in front of them was only a 3rd stage heaven and earth bridge sky prides, his combat strength was far beyond his apparent cultivation level. Generally speaking, this kind of person was the most difficult to deal with. This was because no one knew where his limit was. Please help me. Zi Yusin's delicate body trembled when she saw the flowers of blood blooming. She finally understood that Yi Guqin could injure her not because of a sneak attack. It was because Yi Guqin had the strength to do so. Zi Yusin was not stupid. Based on Yi Guqin's current combat strength, she was afraid that even she could not defeat him. Her only hope was the 4 sky prides on the sword roll. After the massacre, Yi Guqin's black robe was not stained with blood. Drops of blood dripped from the tip of his sword. His gaze was indifferent as he looked at the people from the 2 great ridges and the 4 sky prides on the sword roll. At this moment, in the eyes of Qin Paisai and the others, Yi Guqin's figure was like a towering pillar that supported the heavens. 1 man and 1 sword. He could summon clouds and rain with a flip of his hand. It seems that we've all misjudged this time. Gong Yangming smiled faintly. After all, they were sky prides on the sword roll. They still had the bearing that they should have. After seeing Yi Guqin's strength, although there was a trace of seriousness in their eyes, their expressions were still indifferent. If they were facing Yi Guqin alone, perhaps they would be wary. However, there were now 4 sky prides on the sword roll on their side. If the 4 of them joined forces, it would be enough to deal with Hua Shengjie, Shengguan Yan, Gue Jianqiu, and the other sky prides on the sword roll who were ranked in the top 20. You're Dugu Wubai, right? You do have some skills. Let me take you on. Among the 4, Zhao Yifeng, who was ranked the lowest at 86th, took a step forward and said indifferently. His tone was as if he thought that it was beneath him to fight as a sky pride on the sword roll. Why go through so much trouble? The 4 of you, come at me together. Yi Guqin held the sword in his right hand and placed his left hand behind his back. His tone was indifferent. A sharp and proud peerless edge bloomed from Yi Guqin's body. At this moment, the young man was incomparably dazzling and eye-catching. Chapter 888. When Yi Guqin said that, the sky prides around the valley who were watching the show felt their scalps go numb. They looked dazed as if they had heard the most unbelievable thing. Yi Guqin wanted to challenge 4 sky prides on the sword roll alone. This caused everyone's minds to tremble. Dugu Wubai, have you gone mad? Qin Paisai's body trembled in disbelief. Qin Paisai was extremely surprised by Yi Guqin's combat strength. She even thought that Yi Guqin was definitely qualified to be on the sword roll. However, it was a little too much to say that Yi Guqin wanted to challenge 4 sky prides on the sword roll by himself. Sky prides who could be on the sword roll were not ordinary people. If they went all out, even Hua Shengjie and the other sky prides on the sword roll would not be able to gain any advantage. Qin Paisai was not the only one who thought so. Everyone else thought so too. Heh! Is he digging his own grave? Huang Feiyun and Zi Yusin sneered when they saw this. In their opinion, Yi Guqin was too arrogant. However, who really knew Yi Guqin's background? After Yi Guqin's true qi cultivation recovered, he had never used his full strength. Yi Guqin also wanted to test his strength through battle. Therefore, he did not hesitate to ask Gong Yangming and the other 3 to attack together. Only then would he be qualified to use his true strength. Yi Guqin did not need to explain, and he was too lazy to explain to others. His gaze was as sharp as a sword as he looked at Gong Yangming and the others. If you join forces, we can still fight. If you don't want to, then die. Yi Guqin was not a kind person to begin with. In the misty forest, killing was not forbidden, so Yi Guqin did not need to hold back. You're too arrogant. Zhao Yifeng shouted angrily. His figure flashed as he charged toward Yi Guqin. In his opinion, Yi Guqin's action was looking down on him. Zhao Yifeng could not tolerate it. Sword of Gale. Zhao Yifeng roared, and Tiandi Lingxiao's true qi completely erupted. The sword edge swept towards Yi Guqin like a gale. The surrounding sky prides were shocked when they sensed the fluctuation. As expected of a genius on the sword list. Huang Feiyun and the others nodded in satisfaction. Just a casual move from him was already so powerful. However, Yi Guqin's lips curled into a cold arc. The sword in his hand trembled as he took a step forward. He used so close, yet worlds apart. After recovering his qi cultivation, Yi Guqin's various martial arts and movement techniques were able to display their full strength. With this step, he appeared in front of Zhao Yifeng in a flash as if he was shuttling through the void. Do you want to die? Zhao Yifeng sneered when he saw Yi Guqin take the initiative to collide with his sword. Immortal murdering sword technique, immortal fall. Yi Guqin's eyes were cold as he swung his sword horizontally. Vigorous true qi gushed out of Yi Guqin's body like a volcanic eruption and poured into the sword edge. The extremely sharp sword qi gushed out as if it had turned into a scene of a group of fallen immortals. When the sword was swung, that kind of fierce fluctuation swept out in all directions. The entire valley was rumbling and trembling as a terrifying storm of sword qi swept out. The moment Yi Guqin made his move, everyone was shocked. Splat! Blood spurted out. Yi Guqin's figure appeared behind Zhao Yifeng. Zhao Yifeng's figure seemed to be frozen as he stared blankly at the void. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment. Qin Paisai, Zuoqiu Qing, Zhen Lang, Zi Yusin, Huang Feiyun, and even Gong Yangming were stunned. A line of blood slowly appeared on Zhao Yifeng's neck, and then blood burst out. Gulp! Zhao Yifeng's head rolled down. Everyone's gaze froze at this moment. Endless shock surged out from everyone's hearts. This. Qin Paisai, Zuoqiu Qing, and the others trembled. Huang Feiyun and Zi Yusin's eyes were even more prominent as stormy waves surged in their hearts and their minds buzzed. Gong Yangming and the other three sword roll prodigies were also stunned. One sword. One of the sword roll prodigies was killed in an instant. The surrounding people were shocked. The prodigies who were watching the show could not hide the shock in their eyes as they looked at the indifferent youth. You. Who are you? Gong Yangming's back was covered in cold sweat. Even if it were him, it would be impossible for him to kill Zhao Yifeng in an instant. Moreover, in their eyes, Yi Guqin was only a third-stage heaven and earth bridge cultivator. The person who will kill you. Yi Guqin's tone was indifferent. At this point, he no longer had anything to hide. He was going to completely reveal his edge. Only in this way could he successfully enter the 5 academies. Therefore, Yi Guqin no longer had any scruples and directly attacked. God-slaying sword technique, Permitha. Yi Guqin's figure flashed and endless blood-red sword qi gushed out, turning into countless beautiful but deadly Permitha flowers that attacked Gong Yangming and the others. Attack together! Gong Yangming roared. At this point, they couldn't care less about their identities. The 3 sword roll geniuses attacked together. Geyuan sword technique. Shadowless sword technique. Great mountain splitting sword technique. Gong Yangming, Nie Qian, and Zhong Yan, the 3 sword roll prodigies, attacked together against Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's sword changed again and a terrifying sword technique that could destroy everything was unleashed. Dugu's 9 sword techniques, sword breaking technique. One sword to break all techniques. It directly broke all the sword techniques of Gong Yangming and the other 2. Kill. Yi Guqin's sword was like a rainbow from the 9 heavens, free and unrestrained. Splat. Blood splattered everywhere. Zhong Yan's eyes popped out, and his body stopped moving. A bloody hole appeared in his chest and came out through his body. The sword-breaking technique had pierced through his heart. Another sword roll prodigy had fallen. The second one. All the surrounding prodigies were terrified. Yiguchin killed 2 sword roll prodigies with 2 moves. Qin Paisai and the other Skywind Ridge prodigies were completely confused. They felt that it was unreal, as if they were in a dream. This young man had been silent and had endured their cold words. At this moment, he was like a peerless sword that had completely bloomed its own sharpness. I was wrong, so wrong. Qin Paisai muttered absent-mindedly. Damn it. Gong Yangming's face was extremely gloomy, and the hand holding the sword was trembling uncontrollably. No, how could this be? Nie Qian's face was pale, and her delicate body was trembling like a sieve. At the Sword Roll Divine Palace in Thunder City, she had mocked Yiguchin for only having a Stage 3 cultivation base. But now, this Stage 3 prodigy was like the god of death, and everyone was terrified. It's not over yet. Yiguchin swung his sword again and swept it horizontally. Clang! The sound of the swords colliding was like a sudden clap of thunder. Gong Yangming and Nie Qian retreated continuously, coughing up blood from the corners of their mouths. The two of them together could not block Yiguchin's sword move. Damn it, who is this person? Gong Yangming roared in his heart. Both of them retreated rapidly. They had chosen to retreat. Damn it, let's retreat too. Huang Feiyun and Zi Yusin looked at each other and saw the fear in each other's eyes. This time, they had kicked an iron plate. You want to leave now? Yiguchin's eyes were cold. The sword's edge is not stained by the wind, and the blood will not stop for 1,000 miles. Yiguchin was free and unrestrained. His black hair danced in the wind, and his eyes were filled with disdain. He was like the king of hell, ruling over life and death. Chapter 889. The air was filled with the thick smell of blood. Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge were lying in pools of blood one after another. Zi Yusin, Huang Feiyun, Gong Yangming, Nie Qian, and the rest, including the 2 remaining prodigies, were fleeing in all directions like desperados. The surrounding prodigies were speechless when they saw this scene. Who would have thought that all the prodigies from the 2 ridges and the 4 prodigies from the sword roll could not kill Yiguchin? Instead, they were being chased by Yiguchin. Moreover, their escape was useless. Yiguchin's imminent skyline was too fast. No one could escape Yiguchin's pursuit. The wind did not stop. The sword did not stop. The blood did not stop. A dazzling sword light flashed towards the fleeing Nie Qian. Spare me. Nie Qian's face turned pale as her delicate body trembled. She had never imagined that she would end up like this. Yiguchin's face was indifferent. He did not show any mercy because Nie Qian was a woman. Pfft! A beautiful head flew out. Nie Qian's beautiful eyes were wide open as if she could not believe that she would die in such a way. Stop, we don't have to fight to the death. I was only bewitched by Huang Feiyun. You don't have to stand up for Skywind Ridge either. Gong Yangming was scared out of his wits when he saw Nie Qian being killed in one strike. Although his ranking on the sword roll was the highest among the 4 prodigies, he was not much stronger than Yiguchin. Moreover, the other 3 prodigies on the sword roll were all killed by Yiguchin in one strike. It was impossible for Gong Yangming to do so. It's just for a promise. Yiguchin did not show any mercy and attacked with his sword. Seeing that Yiguchin had no room for negotiation, Gong Yangming's face also surged with a crazy look of desperation. But in the end, Gong Yangming's throat was slit by Yiguchin's sword. After killing Gong Yangming, Yiguchin looked off into the distance. He took another step forward and flew off. In the dense fog of the dense forest, Zi Yusin and Huang Feiyun were frantically fleeing. Damn it! Where did Tianfeng Ridge find such a dangerous person? Zi Yu's heart beat violently as a strong sense of crisis welled up in its heart. That person, could it be? Huang Feiyun seemed to have suddenly thought of something, and his face froze. You're saying? No. Impossible. Zi Yusin also thought of something and shook her head frantically. She didn't want to believe it, nor did she dare to believe it. Can you escape? In front of Huang Feiyun and Zi Yusin was a figure with his back facing them. The tip of his sword was pointed at the ground, and drops of blood dripped down the tip of the sword. Spare us. What did Tianfeng City Lord give you? Wealth? Treasures? We can give you anything. As long as you let us go, we will definitely treat you well. Huang Feiyun's voice trembled slightly. As the young lord of the mountain ridge, he had never been so humble. Yes, we can give you anything you want. Even if you want me, it's fine. Zi Yusin's lips were trembling. She was even willing to give up her body to Yi Guqin to spare her life. My promise is as heavy as Mount Tai. Yi Guqin's expression was still indifferent. Since Qin Zhen had given him the spirit Bodhi, Yi Guqin had to fulfill his promise. Although Qin Zhen and Qin Paisai didn't believe him at first, Yi Guqin couldn't go back on his word because of this. At this moment, even if Huang Feiyun and the others took out the sacred medicine, they wouldn't be able to exchange for their lives. Whoosh! Yi Guqin didn't delay any longer. The tip of his sword vibrated and swept out. Puchi, Huang Feiyun and Zi Yusin's faces were twisted with fear, and their bodies froze. You really are. Huang Feiyun and Zi Yusin covered their necks with their hands. Their eyes bulged out as they stared at Yi Guqin. I know what I'm doing. There's no need to say it out loud. Yi Guqin turned around and left. I hate it. Huang Feiyun and Zi Yusin's faces were filled with unwillingness and regret. If they had known that the young man in front of them was the sword demon who had caused 3 rays of light to illuminate the world in the first round, they wouldn't have made a move no matter what. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. With a plop, the two of them fell into a pool of blood. The remaining 2 geniuses of the mountain ridge were just some small fries. Yi Guqin couldn't be bothered to chase after them. He returned to the canyon. Qin Paisai and the others were still there. The traitors Su Wenbin, Su Jingjing, and the others had already escaped. Seeing Yi Guqin arrive safely, the surrounding geniuses who were watching the show couldn't help but suck in a breath of air. Their eyes were filled with shock. Many people looked at the bloody sword in Yi Guqin's hand and understood everything. None of the geniuses on the sword ranking had survived. Qin Paisai and the others were also shocked. Are you all okay? Yi Guqin asked indifferently. Not dead. Those people. Qin Paisai's words were somewhat stuttering. They're all dead, Yi Guqin said indifferently. Although they had a hunch, Qin Paisai and the others still couldn't believe it. Where's Han Lingxian? Yi Guqin asked. She lured Yu Yuankue away to share the burden. She should be heading in that direction. Qin Paisai pointed at the fog. Okay, Kong, you stay here and take care of things. Yi Guqin's face was indifferent. He took a step forward and flashed away. Is the god of slaughter going to provoke the Yu family? Some of the onlookers couldn't help but exclaim. The Yu family wasn't a family that anyone could provoke. Not to mention, there was also Yu Shuangyan, ranked 27th on the sword ranking. Sister Lingxian was right. We, and even father, misjudged him. Qin Paisai shook her head with a bitter smile. Do you think that Duga Wubai is? Zuiqiu Qing thought of something and stopped herself. This can't be. Qin Paisai's delicate body shook. Although Yi Guqin's performance had surprised her, she didn't think in that direction. After all, the sword demon who had broken Hua Wuxiu's sword moves and even made 3 brilliant lights illuminate the world was too far away from ordinary geniuses like them. However, on second thought, this seemed to be the only reasonable explanation for Yi Guqin's stunning performance. Maybe our Skywind Ridge has really picked up a treasure this time, Qin Paisai said absent-mindedly. It wasn't hard to imagine that Yi Guqin's identity had been confirmed. The impact of that would be immense. All the geniuses would be overshadowed by his brilliance. No matter in the end, we have to witness it with our own eyes. Quickly recover from your injuries. Qin Paisai and the others took out elixirs to adjust their breathing. They wanted to witness Yiguchen's true identity. On the other side, in the depths of the misty forest, a beautiful figure in sapphire blue was running. Her body was covered with wounds and blood was still oozing out. Her delicate face was very pale because of her weakness and injuries, making her look pitiful. Behind her, a figure had a mocking look on his face as he looked at the fleeing beauty. "Ha, beauty, do you think you can escape?" The person chasing her was Yu Yuankoe. He was ranked 65th on the sword ranking and was at the 8th level of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. He was stronger than Gong Yangming and the others. He wasn't someone that Han Lingxian could fight against. I wonder if Paisai and the others have escaped danger. And young Master Dugu, I hope we don't meet the people from the two great ridges, Han Lingxian thought to herself. At such a critical moment, she was still worried about the safety of others. Chapter 890. You must be worried about the people from Tianfeng Ridge. Don't worry. With Huang Feiyun and the others surrounding them, the people from Tianfeng Ridge will not be spared. Yu Yuankoe smiled faintly. You will also suffer retribution. Han Lingxian gritted her teeth and said with a pale face. She knew in her heart that there was no way she could escape from Yu Yuankoe. However, even if she died, Han Lingxian would not let Yu Yuankoe have his way. No matter what, the Yu family is still a family in the Swordway Alliance. Who dares to take revenge on me? But you, beauty, Huang Feiyun and the others were willing to spare your life because of me. Instead of being grateful, you chose to escape. You really disappoint me. Yu Yuankoe shook his head and sighed. You are a beast in human clothing. Disgusting. Han Lingxian said as she tried to activate the genuine qi in her body, trying to escape. Yu Yuankoe's eyes were filled with mockery. He swept the long sword in his hand, and streaks of sword qi rushed toward Han Lingxian. However, it was not to kill Han Lingxian. It was just like a cat toying with a mouse, causing more wounds to appear on her body. Han Lingxuan's skirt was torn, revealing her slender legs. Her dress was also torn in many places, revealing her creamy skin. Together with the blood that oozed out, it was a glaring sight. Han Lingxian bit her lips tightly, knowing that Yu Yuankoe was teasing her. Come here. Yu Yuankoe stretched out one hand, and a vigorous genuine qi rushed toward Han Lingxian. Han Lingxian blocked with her sword, but she spat out another mouthful of blood. Yu Yuankoe's body flashed, and he formed a seal with one hand to suppress Han Lingxian. Han Lingxian felt extremely bitter. Although she was not weak, there was still a huge gap between her and Yu Yuankoe, who was on the Swordway list. Seeing that she was about to be suppressed by Yu Yuankoe, Han Lingxian gritted her teeth and held the sword in her hand, wanting to cut her own neck. Seeing this, Yu Yuankoe flicked his finger, and a stream of genuine qi shot out, blowing away the sword in Han Lingxuan's hand. Come here. Yu Yuankoe had completely suppressed the Zhen qi in Han Lingxuan's body, and was about to embrace Han Lingxuan's waist with one hand. Han Lingxuan's face was filled with despair. Who would have thought that she wouldn't even be able to kill herself in front of a prodigy on the sword ranking? Is this my ending? Han Lingxian smiled sadly. As one of the three great geniuses of the Chuyun dynasty, she came to the Sword dynasty to explore. She thought that she could enter the 5 great academies and cultivate wholeheartedly. However, Han Lingxian would never have thought that she would end up like this. Han Lingxian closed her eyes in despair. She, who had always been strong, actually shed 2 lines of tears from the corners of her eyes. Feeling that her waist was being held by a strong arm, Han Lingxian bit her lips hard. She was in despair. However, at this moment, a familiar faint voice sounded in his ears. Sorry, I'm late. The young man's calm voice was like the sound of nature at this moment. Han Lingxian was shocked. She opened her beautiful eyes in disbelief and saw the side of a handsome face. It was Yiguchin. Yiguchin hugged her slender waist, and her body moved back, avoiding Yu Yuankue's evil claws. It's you. Yu Yuankue's face froze, and he stared at Yiguchin. His eyes were filled with endless resentment and anger. It was because of Yiguchin that he had suffered such humiliation at the Tianfeng banquet. Yu Yuankue would never forget this for the rest of his life. Young Master Dugu, why are you here? Han Lingxian felt dizzy, as if she was dreaming. She was like a person on the verge of collapse in the darkness. In the end, a ray of light suddenly appeared. Yiguchin was that ray of light. At this moment, her slender waist was hugged by Yiguchin, and his warm masculine breath made Han Lingxuan's pale face blush. Since young, Han Lingxian had focused on swordsmanship, and she had never been so close to a man of the opposite sex. However, the crisis was not over yet. Han Lingxian did not know Yiguchin's strength, so Yiguchin's appearance made her even more worried. Young Master Dugu, leave quickly. Don't worry about me. We can't deal with Yu Yuankue, Han Lingxian said hurriedly. Looking at Han Lingxian, who was still thinking about him at this moment of despair, Yiguchin's eyes were deep. He looked at Han Lingxuan's body again, and the big and small wounds on her body, and her torn skirt, which made her look so miserable and glaring. Yiguchin's eyes were filled with coldness. Let go of her for me. Seeing Yiguchin hugging Han Lingxian, Yu Yuankue's face darkened even more. Han Lingxian was about to become the meat in his mouth. Who would have thought that such an unforeseen event would happen? However, in Yu Yuankue's eyes, Yiguchin was only at the third level of the heaven and earth spirit bridge. Wait for me. Yiguchin put down Han Lingxian, holding the long sword in his hand, his expression indifferent. Young Master Dugu, don't be rash. Seeing this, Han Lingxuan's face changed. She did not expect that Yiguchin would want to fight with Yu Yuankue. Heh! Are you courting death? Even if you have refined the spirit Bodhi, you are only at the third level. Yu Yuankue's eyes were filled with ridicule. That's enough. Go accompany Huang Feiyun and Zi Yusin. Yiguchin said indifferently. Where are they? Yu Yuankue's eyes narrowed slightly as he felt that something was wrong. 9 Nether Yellow Springs. As Yiguchin's words fell, his body flashed, and a terrifying amount of true qi burst out. God-slaying sword technique, Permitha. With a slash of the sword, the blood-red sword qi turned into countless red spider lilies, spreading across the sky and surrounding Yu Yuankue. This. Yu Yuankue's mind shook as he hurriedly blocked with his sword. With a loud bang, Yu Yuankue's body retreated dozens of steps. Traces of sharp sword qi slashed across his cheek, bringing out traces of blood. How is this possible? Your strength. Yu Yuankue looked as if he had seen a ghost. The Yiguchin in front of him was clearly only at the third level, but the power of this attack shocked him, an 8th level heaven's pride. Not far away, Han Lingxuan's jade-like face also seemed to have frozen. She had only seen Yiguchin's physical strength before. This was the first time she had seen Yiguchin's true strength. This kind of strength shocked Han Lingxian to the point of speechlessness. Is this the true strength of young Master Dugu? Han Lingxian muttered absent-mindedly. I really misjudged. Yu Yuankue stared at Yiguchin, his face extremely ugly. Yiguchin did not say a word, but slashed out again. The God-slaying sword technique and the immortal slaying sword technique were used one after another. Yu Yuankue also slashed out at the same time, the full strength of the 8th level of the heaven and earth spiritual bridge burst out. After all, he was ranked 65th, and his strength was much stronger than Gong Yangming and the others. In addition, the Yu family was a prosperous family, and they had many superior martial arts techniques. Therefore, Yiguchin could not kill Yu Yuankue as he had killed Gong Yangming and the others. Your strength is indeed beyond my expectations, but it will not change the outcome. Yu Yuankue pointed his sword to the sky, and powerful sword qi gushed out. Sky-severing sword technique. Yu Yuenkui roared, and the sword chi gushed out for dozens of feet, falling down on Yiguchen. Ha, an imperial-level sword technique? Yiguchen's eyes were indifferent. He also used an imperial-level sword technique, and vigorous vital energy poured into the blade. As the sword edge buzzed and trembled, there seemed to be an extremely sharp sword chi swallowing and spitting out. Kill! Yiguchen slashed out with his sword. A bright silver sword light, hundreds of feet long, rushed out with a destructive aura, as if it wanted to sweep through the 9 heavens and the galaxy. That is, the holy sword trifecta. Han Lingxian exclaimed. Chapter 891. What Yiguchen was using was the royal-level sword art, the 3 ultimate holy swords. There were 3 basic moves in the 3 ultimate holy swords, and Yiguchen was using the first move, the star-breaking sword art. The dazzling silver sword radiance swept toward Yu Yuenkui, as if it was going to cut through the stars in the sky. The shock in Han Lingshuan's eyes couldn't be erased. Learning an royal-level sword art wasn't something that could be done in a day. There were many people who spent a few years or even 10 years to learn an royal-level sword art. However, it hadn't been long since Yiguchen comprehended the royal sword steel, and Yiguchen was already able to use the star-breaking sword art. Han Lingxian had also obtained the cultivation method of the 3 ultimate holy swords, but she was only at the entry level, and couldn't even use the power of the star-breaking sword art. In comparison, Yiguchen's monstrous talent was obvious. Boom! Yiguchen's star-breaking sword art collided with Yu Yuenkui's sky-severing sword art, and an endless wave of sword chi spread out in all directions. In such an extreme collision, the one who was at a disadvantage wasn't Yiguchen, but Yu Yuenkui. Thump! 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 Yu Yuenkui's body trembled, and the hand holding the sword trembled slightly. He took dozens of steps back, and his eyes were fixed on Yiguchen. He was a genius ranked 65th on the sword ranking, but he was forced to retreat by an unknown youth. Who would believe it if word got out? Who are you? Yu Yuenkui's playful and relaxed expression was replaced by a serious one. He wasn't stupid. He knew that Yiguchen's cultivation level was too deceptive, and it didn't match his real combat strength. The person who will kill you. Yiguchen didn't say anything, and continued to attack. The silver sword radiance seemed to be able to split the sky, and it swept out, causing the air to scream. Yu Yuenkui blocked with his sword. The two of them collided, and their swords collided. Dazzling sparks flew everywhere. Looking at Yiguchen fighting Yu Yuenkui, Han Lingxian was completely dazed. It was only now that Han Lingxian realized how much she had underestimated Yiguchen. Not only her, but Qin Zhen, Qin Paisai, and all the other geniuses of the Skywind Ridge had underestimated this unknown young man. The true strength that he displayed at this moment was definitely comparable to that of a prodigy on the sword list. Moreover, he was one of the top geniuses. Young Master Dugu, just how deep are you hiding? Could it be that you're really... Han Lingxian covered her red lips with her jade-like hand. She seemed to have thought of something, and her heart was in turmoil. Her beautiful eyes unconsciously widened. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this might really be the case. Boom! After another attack, Yu Yuenkui's chest shook violently, and he coughed up blood. There was a hint of fear in his eyes. Although Yiguchen's cultivation was only at stage 3, his swordsmanship, movement, and genuine chi were all better than Yu Yuenkui, who was at stage 8. Today, with Yiguchen here, he would not be able to get the beauty as he wished. Thinking of this, Yu Yuenkui wanted to retreat. At worst, he would go find Yushuang Yan later. With Yushuang Yan here, Yiguchen would be suppressed. At that time, Yu Yuenkui would still be able to get Han Lingxian as he wished. After making up his mind, Yu Yuenkui swung his sword again. A powerful sword radiance swept across and blocked Yiguchen's attack. Then he quickly retreated and was about to leave. Yiguchen's eyes flashed. He broke Yu Yuenkui's move with his sword and used so close, yet worlds apart. His body seemed to pass through the void as he flashed toward Yu Yuankuei. Seeing this, Yu Yuankuei was shocked. He could not help but shout, "I'll retreat." "Are you really going to force me? I've said it before. You'd better not attack, or you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Unfortunately. Yi Guqin shook his head slightly and said indifferently. Yi Guqin had warned Yu Yuankuei outside the remains of the honorable swordsman. Hearing this, Yu Yuankuei's face tightened. At that time, he had not experienced Yi Guqin's true strength. Why would he care about his warning? "I'm from the Yu family. Yu Shuangyan is also participating in this selection. Are you really not going to give her any leeway?" Yu Yuankuei gritted his teeth. He had turned from the hunter to the prey. Now, he had to bring up his family background in Yu Shuangyan. Yu Shuangyan was a heaven's favorite, ranked 27th on the sword roll, and was at stage 9 of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. Yu Yuankuei did not believe that Yi Guqin would not have any scruples. Unfortunately, not only did he not know Yi Guqin's strength, but he also did not know his character. What Yi Guqin was least afraid of was threats. Yi Guqin's genuine qi burst out and activated so close, yet so far. It was as if he had broken through space. He swept directly in front of Yu Yuankuei and slashed down with his sword. Yu Yuankuei blocked with his sword and was sent flying again. Because in the selection of the 5 academies, no external force could be used. Therefore, Yu Yuankuei did not have any life-saving treasures. Secret skill of blood soul. Yu Yuankuei was on the verge of death. His face was ferocious, and he was no longer as relaxed as before. His sea of consciousness and sea of qi seemed to be burning. His genuine qi, which was already vigorous, surged again. All his genuine qi gathered on the blade of his sword and exploded with his strongest sword. But, Yi Guqin's face was cold. He turned the long sword in his hand, and the sword light illuminated the 9 heavens. A magnificent blue sword light appeared like a crescent moon. The magnificent blue crescent moon turned into an arc of sword qi and swept toward Yu Yuankuei. Wherever it passed, the sharp sword qi cut through the air and roared violently. This powerful move was the second move of the 3 ultimate holy swords, the absolute sword of Kuan-Yu. Han Lingxuan's eyes were shocked, and her heart was in turmoil. Han Lingxian was surprised that Yi Guqin could fully comprehend the star-breaking absolute sword in such a short time. But now, the absolute sword of Kuan-Yu was also displayed. Could it be that young Master Dugu has fully comprehended the 3 ultimate holy swords? Han Lingxian was completely stunned. What a monstrous talent! What a monstrous strength! Han Lingxian was almost 80% sure that Yi Guqin was the mysterious sword demon. Boom! The magnificent and deep crescent moon sword broke Yu Yuankuei's sword momentum and flashed past, flattening a large area of the ancient forest behind Yu Yuankuei. Yu Yuankuei's body was also frozen in place. His eyes turned numbly, staring at Yi Guqin with extreme resentment and resentment. Yu Shuangyan and the Yu family will not let you go, puff. A bright line of blood appeared from Yu Yuankuei's forehead. His whole body was cut in half by the crescent moon sword light. Looking at the dead Yu Yuankuei, Yi Guqin's expression was calm. Once he entered the academy, the Yu family could not do anything to him. As for Yu Shuangyan, the only people who could make Yi Guqin take seriously were the top 10 geniuses on the sword ranking. As for Yu Shuangyan, who was ranked 27th, she was not a threat to Yi Guqin. Young Master Dugu, looking at Yu Yuankuei, who was killed by the absolute sword of Kuan-Yu, Han Lingxian could not calm down for a long time. Chapter 892. Yu Yuankuei, ranked 65th on the sword ranking, had died so easily at the hands of Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's sword was pointed diagonally. His expression was calm, and his posture was relaxed. It seemed to him that killing a prodigy on the sword ranking was not a big deal. Young Master Dugu, you. Han Lingxian wanted to say something, but stopped. You're seriously injured. Yi Guqin's gaze turned to Han Lingxian. Han Lingxian wanted to say something, but she felt a wave of extreme weakness and exhaustion hit her. Han Lingxian had been on tenterhooks before. Only now, with Yu Yuankui's death, did Han Lingshuan's tense heartstrings finally relax. The large amount of blood loss made her dizzy, and she fell forward. Finally, she landed on a broad and warm chest. Yi Guchen frowned slightly, holding the unconscious Han Lingxian. He brought her to a pool of water. After a moment of hesitation, he treated her wounds and applied medicine. Then, he took out a healing pill and stuffed it into Han Lingshuan's mouth. After a day, Han Lingxian slowly woke up. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw Yi Guchen sitting cross-legged not far away, meditating. Han Lingxian was slightly confused at first. Then, she suddenly realized that the wounds on her body had been treated and were beginning to heal. Could it be? Han Lingshuan's delicate face unconsciously turned slightly red. She also realized that Yi Guchen must have treated her wounds while she was unconscious. However, Han Lingxian still believed in Yi Guchen's character. Yi Guchen would not do anything to her. Yi Guchen was really a person who was greedy for beauty. Back in the Chuyun dynasty, Yi Guchen could have used the 3 ultimate holy swords as a condition to marry the 3 sisters. Han Lingxian blushed when she thought about how Yi Guchen had seen her body. But in her heart, she didn't feel too disgusted. However, the shyness in Han Lingshuan's heart was quickly replaced by curiosity. She looked at the young man who was sitting cross-legged and adjusting his breathing. His breathing was long and deep, and her curiosity grew. "Miss Han, you're awake." Yi Guchen slowly opened his eyes. There was a faint smile on his lips. "Thank you, young Master Dugu, for wanting to save me." "Lingxian is eternally grateful," Han Lingxian said sincerely. Although she and Yi Guchen were friends, they weren't particularly close. For her sake, Yi Guchen had actually killed Yu Yuankui and provoked the Yu family. This made Han Lingxian feel extremely guilty. "Miss Han has also helped me a lot. It's just a small matter." Yi Guchen smiled. "If you don't mind, you can call me Lingxian," Han Lingxian said softly. Yi Guchen nodded slightly. Young Master Dugu, could you really be?" Han Lingxian couldn't help but ask. "Since you already know, why do you have to say it out loud?" Yi Guchen smiled faintly. Han Lingshuan's face froze when she heard this. Although she already knew, Han Lingxian still couldn't hide the shock in her heart when it was actually confirmed. The young man in front of her was the one who had broken Hua Wuxiu's sword technique at Tianfeng Ridge. He was also the one who had suppressed the top 3 of the sword leaderboard at the 3 great heavenly gates and had attracted 3 brilliant lights. Han Lingxian couldn't help but puff up her cheeks and roll her eyes at Yi Guchen when she thought about how she had been kept in the dark. "Young Master Dugu is so naughty," Han Lingxian was shocked when she finished speaking. Her tone was too coquettish, as if she was flirting. She blushed slightly and secretly observed Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen didn't care about Han Lingshuan's coquettish and charming appearance. 2 hours later, Yi Guchen and Han Lingxian left to meet up with Qin Paisai and the others. "Did you get the token?" Yi Guchen asked casually. "Not yet. We just came in and were targeted by Huang Feiyun and the others. We didn't have time to get the token." Han Lingxian shook her head. "Here." Yi Guchen took out 10 tokens. "This." Han Lingshuan's beautiful eyes widened as she stared blankly at Yi Guchen. There was a rare kind of dazed cuteness in her appearance. "What's wrong?" Yi Guchen tilted his head. "No, nothing. Young Master Dugu, you really gave Lingxian a big surprise." Han Lingxian accepted the tokens. She thought to herself that with Yi Guchen's talent, the 5 academy selection was easier than eating and drinking for him. Half an hour later, Yi Guchen and the others found Qin Paisai. "Sister Han Lingxian, it's good that you're okay." Qin Paisai hugged Han Lingxian, feeling a lingering fear. "It was young Master Dugu who saved me." Han Lingxian was also happy. This time, they could be considered to have survived a disaster. What about Yu Yuankue? Qin Paisai probed. He's dead, Han Lingxian said truthfully. Qin Paisai, Zuoqiu Qing, Zhen Lang, and the others were shocked. Although they had expected it, they couldn't help but suck in a breath. After all, after killing Yu Yuankue, that Yu Shuangyan definitely wouldn't let Yiguchen go. It's going to be troublesome. Qin Paisai was worried. Although the Purple Smoke Ridge, Yellow Dragon Ridge, and Yu Yuankue's crisis had been resolved, another great enemy had appeared. However, it attracted an even bigger enemy, Yu Shuangyan. It's okay. Han Lingxian smiled faintly. She knew that with Yiguchen's strength as a sword demon, he would definitely be able to enter the academy. At that time, even the Yu family wouldn't dare to touch the academy's disciples. The 5 academies were under the Sword Dao Alliance, and in the Sword Dynasty, no one would dare to openly attack the academy's disciples. After that, the Skywind Ridges group gathered enough tokens with Yiguchen, Kong Kong, and the others. 7 days had finally passed. In the depths of the Honorable Sword ruins, outside the bewildering forest, numerous figures had been waiting for a long time, and they were all lords of various ridges and aristocratic families. The Skywind Lord, Qin Zhen, stood with his hands behind his back. Although that dignified face looked calm, one could vaguely see some nervousness in the depths of his eyes. In the previous 5 academy selections, the Skywind Ridge's prodigies were targeted by the Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge in the second round, resulting in their complete annihilation. But this time, it was different. His daughter, Qin Paisai, was among them. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't worried. Ha, Lord Qin, are you worried? A purple-clothed man laughed. It was the Purple Smoke Lord. Of course he's worried. After all, his daughter is among them this time, another yellow-clothed man said. He was the Yellow Dragon Lord, and he was also laughing coldly. Qin Zhen had rejected their good intentions and refused to join the Hua family. Therefore, he had to be prepared to be annihilated. If you don't listen to good people, you'll suffer. This time, not only will you lose your position as Lord, you won't even be able to protect your daughter, the Yellow Dragon Lord said mercilessly. The Hua family is an aristocratic family that brings disaster to the country. I, Qin Zhen, will never join you. Although Qin Zhen's expression was ugly, he was still unyielding. In the past few years, the Hua family, the Yin family, the Jiang family, the Shengguan family, and other pseudo-saint aristocratic families in the Sword Dao Alliance. They caused chaos in the country, disrupted order, and subdued many lords. It seemed that they wanted to dominate the Sword Dao Alliance. As for the rogue cultivators in the Sword Dao Alliance, they were greatly suppressed by these aristocratic families, and their power was rapidly reduced. As a rogue cultivator, Qin Zhen naturally didn't want to become a lackey of the aristocratic families. Ha, you won't cry until you see the coffin, the Purple Smoke Lord and the Yellow Dragon Lord sneered. They were very calm and thought that the outcome was already decided. The people from the Skywind Ridge would definitely be annihilated under the encirclement of the 2 ridges. Chapter 893. While everyone was waiting, numerous figures began to walk out from the bewildering forest. In fact, many prodigies had already collected enough tokens on the 2nd or 3rd day and walked out of the forest. For example, Hua Shengjie, Yin Wufeng, Shengguan Yan, Yushuang Yan, Gui Jianqiu, Yan Chou, and other prodigies. At this moment, a pretty girl in a yellow dress with a scorpion tail braid was staring at the exit of the maze forest. She was Shengguan Yan from the Shengguan family. She had always remembered how Shengguan Yan had been pushed back by Yiguchen in the maze forest. Dugu Wubai, don't tell me you can't even pass the 2nd round? Shengguan Yan's eyes darted around. She didn't hate Yiguchen. She was just curious that a nameless young man like Yiguchen was actually a dark horse. Of course, Shengguan Yan didn't think of Yiguchen as the sword demon. After all, in everyone's eyes, the sword demon was an existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with top prodigies like Hua Wuxiu. He wasn't on the same level as them. Why hasn't he come out yet? Yu Shuangyan stood on the other side with a cold expression. She frowned slightly. After so long, Yu Yuankui still hadn't come out. No matter what, Yu Yuankui was still a member of the Yu family. Yu Shuangyan couldn't ignore him. As time passed, more and more prodigies walked out one after another. Most of them had injuries on their bodies. Looks like it's about time, the venerable who was in charge of the selection said lightly. On the other side, the Purple Smoke Lord and the Yellow Dragon Lord also frowned. Although no prodigy from the Tianfeng territory had appeared. However, the prodigies from their two territories hadn't appeared either. Why hasn't he come out yet? The Purple Smoke Lord asked in a low voice. Maybe it took a lot of time to encircle and annihilate the people from the Tianfeng territory, the Yellow Dragon Lord said. Qin Zhen secretly clenched his fist and sighed in his heart. Was it right or wrong for me to trust Duge Wubai? Qin Zhen sighed in his heart. A group of people flashed out of the maze forest. They were Yi Guqin, Qin Paisai, and the others. Father. When Qin Paisai saw Qin Zhen, she couldn't help but feel joy in her heart. Pei Si, you. Qin Zhen's body shook, and his clenched fists trembled slightly. The heavenly son of Skywind Ridge had come out. Although there were far fewer people than when they had first entered, Qin Paisai and several other important geniuses were still present. This was already a great surprise for Qin Zhen. How is this possible? The eyes of the Purple Smoke Tribal Lord and the Yellow Dragon Tribal Lord trembled. The heavenly son of Skywind Ridge had come out, but not a single person from their two territories had appeared. Father, this time it's all thanks to young Master Dugu, Qin Paisai said. She couldn't help but look at Yi Guqin with respect. Many thanks to young Master Dugu. I really didn't misjudge you. Qin Zhen clasped his fists at Yi Guqin. It's no problem. This is a deal between you and me. I'm just fulfilling my promise. Yi Guqin waved his hand. When Qin Zhen heard this, a trace of shame appeared on his face. Even he had been wavering and hesitating, not trusting Yi Guqin and thinking that he had misjudged him. Where are the people from the Yellow Dragon Ridge and the Purple Smoke Ridge? The Yellow Dragon Tribal Lord stepped forward and asked coldly. What about Yusen? Where are they? The Purple Smoke Tribal Lord also asked coldly. From the moment Qin Paisai and the others appeared, they had a bad feeling in their hearts. Do you think I'm nothing? We're still in the middle of the selection. Qin Zhen stepped forward and his aura erupted, blocking the two tribal lords. Tribal lords, please stop arguing. The sovereign in charge of the selection snorted coldly in the sky. I just want to ask where the heavenly son of Yellow Dragon Ridge is. The Yellow Dragon Tribal Lord suppressed his anger. What else can you do? If you want to harm others, you should be prepared to be harmed, Qin Paisai said coldly. After all, the Skywind Ridge had already fallen out with the two territories, so there was no need for them to worry about anything. Moreover, they were still in the middle of the selection. They couldn't blame others for their deaths, so the two tribal lords couldn't take revenge. The faces of the two lords were also solemn and extremely unsightly. How could they not understand that the people from the Purple Smoke Ridge and the Yellow Dragon Ridge, including their sons and daughters, had all been wiped out? Who is it? The Purple Smoke Tribal Lord gritted his teeth, his body trembling. The Skywind Ridge definitely didn't have the ability to deal with them. Not to mention the four heavenly sons of the sword ranking. Qin Paisai was at a loss for words. She wouldn't expose Yi Guqin. Is it that brat? The Yellow Dragon Tribal Lord's eyes were bloodshot as he looked at Yi Guqin. At this moment, Yu Shuangyan walked over with light steps. Seeing Yu Shuangyan, Qin Paisai and the others' expressions changed. The Skywind Ridge wasn't afraid of the two tribal lords. However, the Yu family was one of the aristocratic families in the Sword Dao Alliance. Even if they didn't have a false saint, their strength was far from what a tribal lord could contend with. Where is Yu Yuankui? Yu Shuangyan's tone was cold as she asked condescendingly. Her aura was so oppressive that Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others found it difficult to breathe. Because Yu Yuankui had only had conflicts with the Skywind Ridge before, Yu Shuangyan directly came to find him. Seeing this situation, many people in the surroundings looked over. Yi Guchen's body flashed, and he stood in front of the two girls. You have to pay the price for doing wrong, right? Facing Yu Shuangyan's oppressive aura, Yi Guchen was calm and composed. So. Yu Shuangyan's eyes narrowed, and her face was extremely cold. He's dead, Yi Guchen said calmly. What? Yu Yuankui, ranked 65th on the Sword Dao ranking, is dead? Did he die at the hands of this young man? But his aura is only at the 3rd level of the Heaven and Earth spiritual bridge. As soon as these words came out, it caused a small commotion in the surroundings. 65th on the Sword Dao ranking wasn't particularly dazzling, but it wasn't weak either. He was considered one of the best among the geniuses. The surrounding people found it hard to imagine how a Phase 3 prodigy could kill a Phase 8 prodigy. Ha, this Dugu Wubai really knows how to cause trouble. Shangguan Yen pouted, but she was more curious about Yi Guchen. TSK, looks like another dark horse. Since he killed Yu Yuankui, he will replace him and become the 65th on the Sword Dao ranking. Many geniuses were paying attention to Yi Guchen. However, Hua Xingjie, Yin Wufeng, and the others still ignored them. They didn't even care about the 65th on the Sword Dao ranking. Yen worried guest, on the other hand, glanced at Yi Guchen thoughtfully under his bamboo hat. You have guts. Yu Shuangyan wasn't very angry, but her cold eyes seemed to be able to freeze people. What Yu Shuangyan cared about was not Yu Yuankui, but his identity as a member of the Yu family. In her opinion, no one dared to provoke the Yu family, even if it was just killing a dog of the Yu family. He's just digging his own grave. I hope you won't end up like him. Yi Guchen didn't want to waste time talking to Yu Shuangyan. As soon as these words came out, the whole place fell silent. Everyone was stunned. Chapter 894. Who was Yu Shuangyan? She was ranked 27th on the sword ranking and a 9th phase prodigy. Yu Yuankui couldn't compare to her in terms of strength. In everyone's eyes, even if Yi Guchen could kill Yu Yuankui, it was still wishful thinking for him to fight against Yu Shuangyan. Very good. Yu Shuangyan nodded, not saying anything. He wasn't angry, nor was he enraged. However, this kind of attitude showed the cold killing intent in his heart even more. In her eyes, Yi Guchen was already a dead man, so there was no need for her to be angry with a dead man. Sigh. Young friend Dugu, this is going to be troublesome. Qin Zhen frowned. Yi Guchen and the others had offended Yu Shuangyan, so the 3rd stage wouldn't be peaceful. However, Qin Paisai chuckled and said, Father, you don't have to worry about that. Oh. Qin Zhen was surprised. He realized that Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others didn't seem to be worried about Yi Guchen offending Yu Shuangyan. Father, listen to me. Qin Paisai whispered in Qin Zhen's ear. What, is this true? Qin Zhen's body trembled as he looked at Yi Guchen. Even with his temperament, he couldn't help but take a deep breath in disbelief. We really chose the right person this time. Qin Zhen sighed. At this moment, 2 more figures appeared in the misty forest. They were Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing. They had completed their mission by a hair's breadth. Their eyes flickered, and they didn't dare to approach the people from Skywind Ridge. The people from Skywind Ridge also looked coldly at the Su siblings. Traitors were sometimes more hateful than enemies. Big brother, what should we do now? Su Jingjing's face was as pale as paper. They were like pigs in a mirror. They were no longer human. Now that Huang Feiyun and the others were dead, Skywind Ridge couldn't accept them. After all, Su Jingjing didn't show any mercy to Qin Paisai. There's only one way. Pass the last stage and join the academy, Su Wenbin said. That was their last chance. Alright, the 2nd stage is over. Next, we'll count the tokens. Those who pass will rest on the spot for 3 days before facing the challenge of the final stage. High in the sky, the Venerable One spoke loudly. After that, the tally of tokens was completed. There were about 500 to 600 heavenly talents who passed the second round. It could be said that thousands of soldiers and thousands of horses were crossing a single plank bridge. However, the third stage would be even more difficult than the second stage. What's the third trial? Yi Guqin asked. The third test is to ascend the Thunder Prison Mountain. There is no chance of luck or trickery. It is completely dependent on one's own strength. Han Lingshuan's tone was slightly solemn. Obviously, the third test of the Lightning Prison Mountain wasn't going to be easy. In the second stage, although they had to rely on their own strength, they could also rely on their teammates or luck to pass. However, in the third stage, there was absolutely no chance of luck. What exactly is the Lightning Prison Mountain? Yi Guqin asked curiously. This sword Honorable Ruins belongs to the Lightning Sword Honorable. His sword, the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison, is at the peak of the Lightning Prison Mountain. This mountain is also named after this sword. Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. Han Lingxian had previously told him that the sword of the Lightning Sword Honorable was a heavenly tribulation divine weapon. However, it had fallen to a quasi-heavenly tribulation divine weapon because it was damaged. I'm sure young Master Dugu has heard of the person who forged the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison, Han Lingxian said with a smile. Oh. Who is it? Yi Guqin asked. South Forging Divine Hands, Forging Sky Edge, Han Lingxian said with respect. Yi Guqin was slightly taken aback. He didn't expect the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword to be a divine weapon forged by the old drunkard. Rumor has it that when the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword was forged, many rare materials were added and the souls of 9 dragons were integrated. Therefore, the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword possesses an extremely strong thunderous dragon aura. When it is placed at the peak of the Lightning Prison Mountain, it attracts thunderbolts from the sky all year round and forms a thunder tide. Not only that, because of the 9 dragon souls, some strange thunder spirit creatures have been formed on the Lightning Prison Mountain. They are quite powerful. Hearing Han Lingshuan's tone, Yi Guqin knew that the Lightning Prison Mountain was definitely not easy to break through. However, if it is a divine weapon forged by Senior Forging Sky Edge, then I have a better chance of subduing it, Yi Guqin thought to himself. Yi Guqin had learned the true teachings of Forging Sky Edge. Now that the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword was an ownerless sword, Yi Guqin naturally had a way to resonate with the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword. Of course, the prerequisite was that Yi Guqin had to have the ability to subdue the sword. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. The remaining 500 to 600 Sky Prides also braced themselves for the final round. In the final round, at the end of the Lightning Prison Mountain, the people from the 5 academies would personally witness the ceremony. It was also a chance for them to perform. Young friend Dugu, please. Qin Zhen clasped his hands together and said sincerely. Only when Qin Paisai and the others joined the 5 academies would Qin Zhen be completely at ease. Don't worry, I never make promises easily. Since I have made a promise, I will definitely keep it. Yi Guqin nodded slightly. Then, everyone set off towards the Lightning Prison Mountain in the deepest part of the Sword Sovereign's ruins. About 2 hours later, everyone reached the deepest part of the Sword Sovereign's ruins. Yi Guqin finally saw the Lightning Prison Mountain. The Lightning Prison Mountain was over 1,000 feet tall and stood alone. The entire mountain was baptized by lightning all year round and turned silver. At the top of the Lightning Prison Mountain, countless lightning rays gathered and were extremely bright, making people look down on the scenery inside. Only the faint roar of a dragon and the rumbling of thunder could be heard. A strong dragon might and a lightning attributed might vaguely spread out, inspiring fear in everyone. Once someone steps into the range of the Lightning Prison Mountain, the 9-dragon lightning prison at the top of the mountain will resonate and attract endless heavenly lightning to form a lightning tide. Han Lingshuan's beautiful eyes were solemn. Yi Guqin's eyes were deep. Not only was he not timid, but he was also eager to give it a try. The place where lightning gathered was a rare treasure place to temper one's body. To the others, it was a test. But to Yiguchin, it was a blessed place. Look, that's the ship of the 5 academies. A sky pride was excited as he pointed into the distance. Everyone looked over and saw 5 huge ships floating in the void at the end of the horizon. Obviously, they were the people from the 5 academies. However, the 5 ships were too far away and they could not see the people on the ships clearly. Everyone, the third test is to break through the lightning prison mountain. The entire lightning prison mountain is divided into the lower, middle, upper, and peak. Those who can step into the middle will be able to join the 5 academies. Those who can step into the upper will have a chance to become a bronze emblem disciple. Those who can step into the peak will be fought over by the 5 academies and have a chance to become a silver emblem disciple. In this last test, the people from the 5 academies will be watching. So, do your best. Of course, fighting is not prohibited in the lightning prison mountain as long as you have the strength to do so. The honorable master who was in charge of the test said loudly. All the sky prides rubbed their palms together and the atmosphere instantly reached its peak. Everyone only had one goal, which was the peak of the lightning prison mountain. Chapter 895. In the Sword Dynasty, prodigies from all 360 ridges gathered to participate in the selection. Their goal was to compete for the opportunity to enter the 5 major academies. As for this final stage, although it was incomparably difficult, not a single person chose to retreat. This was their last chance. Swoosh! 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 The 500 to 600 prodigies climbed up the lightning prison mountain like a swarm of locusts. The moment a prodigy stepped into the range of the lightning prison mountain, there was a loud bang. Above the lightning prison mountain, dark clouds covered the land. As the clouds rolled, the power of thunder and lightning gathered. At the peak of the lightning prison mountain, a blazing bolt of lightning crossed the sky and rushed into the dark clouds. Rumble! The thick pillar of lightning reached the sky, as if it had built a bridge between the clouds and the lightning prison mountain. Dragon roars sounded continuously. There were a total of 9 roars, and the sound was earth-shattering. Immediately, under the gaze of all the prodigies who were climbing the mountain, endless lightning was drawn down from the clouds and poured into the lightning prison mountain. Then, it turned into a shocking torrent of lightning that poured down. The terrifying torrent of lightning made the corners of all the prodigies' eyes twitch slightly. Boom! The torrent of lightning was extremely fast. In just a short moment, it rushed down from the peak of the mountain. Some of the weaker prodigies were directly blasted out of the range of the lightning prison mountain amidst a series of screams. Those prodigies who were slightly injured spat out blood. Those who were seriously injured were charred black. They were only at the foot of the mountain, and the torrent of lightning was already so powerful. The prodigies could not imagine how powerful the power of thunder and lightning would be at the peak. Fortunately, the 5 academies selection required one to reach the middle level to pass. Therefore, these prodigies were not too afraid. One by one, they used all their means and began to climb. Yiguchin, Kong, and the rest of the Sky Wind Ridge also began to climb. As soon as Yiguchin entered the lightning prison mountain, he fell into the range of the torrent of lightning. The power of thunder and lightning might be extremely dangerous to others. But to Yiguchin, it was not much of a threat. Yiguchin's body only shook slightly, and he began to adapt to the torrent of lightning. He was surprised to find that the power of lightning was slowly tempering his body. Yiguchin had relied on the power of Saint Medicine to recover from his injuries. Although there weren't any major problems, there was still a trace of imperfection. However, Yiguchin found that his physical body and even his genuine chi were being refined once again in the midst of the thunderstorm. This was a pleasant surprise for Yiguchin. As for Kong, when the thunder tide hit him, a faint golden light flashed on his body and blocked the thunder tide. On the other hand, Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others could only use their true chi to defend themselves. They didn't have bodies as strong as Yiguchin's that could withstand the power of lightning. Yiguchen's relaxed attitude also attracted a lot of attention. TSK, Dugu Wubai from Tianfeng Ridge is indeed a dark horse. He can actually resist the thunder tide with his physical body. Yeah, if he didn't have a conflict with Yushuangyan, he would definitely enter the 5 academies. Some people shook their heads regretfully. Yiguchen's potential as a dark horse caught everyone's attention. But unfortunately, he had provoked someone he shouldn't have. Everyone knew that Yushuangyan would never let Dugu Wubai and the others have a chance to enter the 5 academies. It was just that she hadn't made a move yet. As time passed, most of the geniuses began to adapt to the impact of the thunder tide. About 100 geniuses were directly blasted away by the thunder tide and completely lost their chance. The remaining 400 to 500 geniuses began to climb. At the forefront were naturally the geniuses who received the most attention. Hua Xingjie held a folding fan, and as he waved it, sword chi surged into the clouds as he tore through the thunder tide in front of him. Yin Wufeng was dressed in black and had a sinister look. His entire body was like a blood-colored sword. With a flash, he parted the thunder tide. Shangguan Yan tapped her toes lightly as she moved agilely. With a slash of her sword, she split the thunder tide into 2. Gui Jianqiu was a young man dressed in a gray cloak. As his footsteps flashed, ghostly shadows appeared. The thunder tide was unable to do anything to him. Yan Qiu was still wearing a bamboo hat. With a flute in hand, he used his Misty Rain illusory sword to withstand the thunder tide. There was also Yushuangyan. She didn't target Yiguchen immediately. Instead, she chose to climb first. To these sword roll geniuses, ascending to the middle ranks was not difficult at all. Their goal was the upper ranks or even the pinnacle. After these top elites formed the first echelon, it was the second echelon, which was Yiguchen and company. In fact, with Yiguchen's strength, if he were to climb with all his might, no one would be his match. Even Hua Xingjie was no match for him. However, the thunder tide's tempering powers were greatly beneficial to Yiguchen. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to climb. An hour later, the first echelon, Hua Xingjie and company, had already reached the middle ranks. Yiguchen and company were about to reach the middle ranks. However, Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and company were already extremely pale. They were drenched in sweat. With their strength, they could only reach the middle ranks at best. As for the remaining Skywind Ridge elites, other than Zuoqiu Qing and Zhen Lang, the rest had long been swept away by the thunder tide. Now, only Yiguchen, Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, Zuoqiu Qing, and Zhen Lang were left. Hold on for a little longer, Yiguchen said with a calm expression. His promise was to help Qin Paisai and company enter the 5 great academies. As long as they reached the middle ranks, it would be over. However, at this moment, a bolt of lightning suddenly blasted towards Skywind Ridge. Be careful! Han Lingxian cried out. Yiguchen flicked his finger. The 6-pulse divine sword transformed into a finger light and collided with the bolt of lightning. However, not far away, the figure of a beast wrapped in lightning appeared. It's a thunder spirit. Qin Paisai bit her lip. The Thunder Prison Mountain was so big, but they just had to encounter a thunder spirit. A thunder spirit was a special existence formed by the special terrain of this place. The closer one was to the upper ranks of the Thunder Prison Mountain, the stronger the thunder spirit's strength. This thunder spirit's aura was roughly comparable to a stage 7 prodigy. Although it wasn't fatal, one had to know that Yiguchen and company were still resisting the impact of the thunder tide. Under such circumstances, encountering a thunder spirit would be quite troublesome. Don't worry about it. Continue climbing. Leave this thunder spirit to me, Yiguchen said calmly. But Han Lingxian wanted to say something, but stopped. Don't worry. Yiguchen said casually. The thunder tide at this level couldn't affect him too much. Whoosh! Yiguchen wielded his sword and collided with the thunder spirit. However, the sword directly pierced through the thunder spirit. The thunder spirit opened its mouth and roared, spitting out a ball of lightning. That thunder spirit doesn't have a body of flesh and blood. We can only use true energy to disperse it. Qin Paisai shouted. Oh! Yiguchen's eyes flashed as he poured his true energy into the sword. The blood-red sword light spread out and blasted towards the thunder spirit. After a while, the thunder spirit was finally defeated by Yiguchen. A bolt of lightning suddenly entered Yiguchen's body. This is... Yiguchen's eyes were filled with surprise. He felt very surprised. Chapter 896. This ray of lightning was very strange. After it entered Yiguchen's body, not only did it cause the purple void mysterious lightning in his body to move, it also contained a very faint sword concept. Could this be lightning sword essence? Yiguchen's eyes lit up. He did not expect that after killing the thunder spirit, there would be such a harvest. However, the lightning sword essence contained in this ray of lightning was too faint. It was impossible for Yiguchen to comprehend the lightning sword essence with this. Could it be because of the 9-dragon thunder prison sword? Yiguchen could not help but think. The previous owner of the 9-dragon thunder prison, Thunder Sword Venerable, was probably a mighty figure who comprehended the lightning sword principle. Finally, he integrated the lightning sword principle into the 9-dragon thunder prison. If that was the case, if Yiguchen could get the 9-dragon thunder prison, wouldn't it mean that he also had a chance to comprehend the lightning sword principle? Thinking of this, Yiguchen could not help but have a trace of anticipation. For a sword cultivator, the sword principle was the most irresistible temptation. Moreover, Yiguchen was not worried that the sword principle he comprehended would be complicated. He had a premonition that the sword principle was very important to his future cultivation. Therefore, Yiguchen did not reject the lightning sword principle. Just as Yiguchen was pondering in his heart, a few more thunder spirits appeared and blocked Qin Paisai and the others' path to the middle of the mountain. How could this be? Although there are thunder spirits on the Thunder Prison Mountain, most of them are concentrated in the upper and top levels. How could it be so coincidental? Qin Paisai saw the situation and her face turned slightly ugly. Yiguchen's eyes flashed as he suddenly felt a spying gaze in the dark. He flicked his finger and the sword chi finger light blasted behind a mountain rock in the distance. As the gravel exploded, 2 figures flashed and retreated in a panic. It's you. Qin Paisai's eyes were sharp and saw the two at a glance. It was Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing. These thunder spirits were actually lured here by their scheme. Retreat. The 2 siblings of the Su family abruptly retreated. Yiguchen hesitated for a moment before turning to look at Qin Paisai and the others who were trapped by the thunder spirits. He didn't hesitate, temporarily giving up on chasing after the Su siblings. The sword in his hand trembled, and sword light split the sky, sweeping towards the lightning spirits. In less than a quarter of an hour, all of the thunder spirits were dealt with. Strands of lightning also entered Yiguchen's body. Not only did it speed up the tempering of Yiguchen's body, but it also made Yiguchen's true energy much more vigorous and pure. If I can kill a few more thunder spirits, I might be able to break through. Yiguchen thought to himself. Of course, these few strands of lightning were far from enough for Yiguchen to comprehend the lightning sword essence. Those Su siblings are really despicable. Qin Paisai gnashed her teeth in anger. She never thought that the Su siblings would use such a method to deal with them. They won't be able to jump around for long, let's hurry to the middle level. Yiguchen's tone was indifferent. Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others nodded. The most important thing for them now was to obtain the qualifications to enter the 5 great academies. Soon, under Yiguchen's lead, Han Lingxian and the others also smoothly approached the middle level. However, at a certain moment, Yiguchen's footsteps abruptly stopped. Young Master Dugu, what's wrong? Han Lingxian and the others also stopped. They were only a few steps away from the middle level. Yiguchen was indifferent, looking indifferently at the slender figure in front of him. The woman's white clothes were as red as blood, her face incomparably cold and arrogant, as if she was always looking down on everyone. You Shuangyan. Yi Guqin's tone was indifferent. You. Qin Paisai and the others' eyes widened as they saw Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing standing behind Yu Shuangyan. They instantly understood. As it turned out, the Su siblings had actually sought refuge with Yu Shuangyan. Yu Shuangyan was too lazy to deal with them, so she ordered the Su siblings to do it. The Su siblings attracted the lightning spirit, but it couldn't deal with the Tianfeng Ridge disciples, so they could only ask Yu Shuangyan to do it. Yu Shuangyan couldn't let the Tianfeng Ridge disciples successfully enter the middle level and enter the 5 great academies. If that happened, it would be difficult to take revenge on Yu Yuankue. After all, even the Yu family couldn't deal with the disciples of the academies for no reason. Damn it! Qin Paisai and the others clenched their fists. They were only a few steps away from the middle level. Once they crossed it, they would be able to enter the 5 great academies. In the end, Yu Shuangyan was like a natural moat, blocking in front of them. Yu Shuangyan wasn't someone that Yu Yuankue and Gong Yangming could compare to. As a genius ranked 27th on the sword roll, her strength couldn't be underestimated. Kong Kong wasn't as worried as Qin Paisai and the others. She looked at ease. It was as if following Yi Guqin wouldn't be an obstacle. I'll give you 2 choices. First, destroy your own cultivation and get out. Second, I'll personally take action. Leave no one in the Tianfeng Ridge alive. Yu Shuangyan clenched her fist, and a long sword that looked like it was made of ice appeared. The blade emitted a chilling aura. Leave no one in the Tianfeng Ridge alive. The lords and people from the aristocratic families who were watching the battle outside the Thunder Prison Mountain fixed their eyes on Yi Guqin and the others. The Purple Smoke Lord and the Yellow Dragon Lord laughed coldly as they looked at Qin Zhen. Ha, reincarnation is inevitable. The heavens will spare no one. The Purple Smoke Ridge and the Yellow Dragon Ridge's geniuses had all been killed. The 2 lords were heartbroken, but they couldn't take revenge. At this moment, they could finally witness the destruction of the Tianfeng Ridge with their own eyes. Qin Zhen's expression was solemn, and he didn't say a word. Little friend Dugu, if your identity is really... Qin Zhen thought to himself. If Qin Paisai's guess was true, then Yu Shuangyan was far from being able to stop Yi Guqin's footsteps. On the Thunder Prison Mountain, Yu Shuangyan's expression was cold, but her murderous intent was overflowing. Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others couldn't help but feel their hearts tighten. The aura of a stage 9 spiritual bridge of heaven and earth made them feel suffocated. Yi Guqin's gaze was indifferent. With a flip of his wrist, a long sword appeared in his hand. It seems like you're the same as Yu Yuankue. Both of you want to die. Yi Guqin took a step forward and unleashed the full power of his stage 3 cultivation. His vigorous genuine qi gushed out like a volcano. Qin Zhen's guess was right. Yu Shuangyan was far from being able to stop Yi Guqin's footsteps. Feeling Yi Guqin's explosive aura, Yu Shuangyan's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. However, she still didn't choose to retreat. Her icy sword pierced toward Yi Guqin. Wherever it passed, the ground was covered with a layer of frost. What Yu Shuangyan comprehended was actually also the ice sword Dao. Flying frost sword technique. Yu Shuangyan's stage 9 aura erupted. Her true energy resonated with the surrounding heaven and earth, amplifying it by 9 times. The biting cold and vigorous sword energy enveloped Yi Guqin. Yu Shuangyan was confident that she could suppress Yi Guqin. Facing Yu Shuangyan's move, Yi Guqin's expression was indifferent. He held the sword in his right hand, raised his left hand, and a pitch-black flame ignited. His hand brushed the blade. Inch by inch, the blade burned with black flames. It was the Nirvana demonic heart flame. Yi Guqin raised his sword. His true energy poured into the blade, causing the demonic flame to surge. A blazing aura rose. The 2 swords collided, and violent sparks erupted. One side was covered with frost and snow, while the other side was scorched earth. Vigorous sword energy rippled like waves, sweeping in all directions. Even the thunderbolts that were rushing down were scattered by the shockwaves. Chapter 897. After the collision, Yu Shuangyan's eyes once again revealed a look of surprise. She couldn't understand how Yi Guqin, who was only at the third stage of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth, could have such powerful true qi that he could resist her true qi at the ninth stage. How could this be? Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing were also dumbfounded. In their eyes, Yi Guqin had been a cripple without any true qi, but now, he could contend with Yu Shuangyan, who was ranked 27th on the sword ranking. This kind of contrast made them feel extremely unreal. Not only them, but the spectators on the outskirts of the Thunder Prison Mountain were also surprised. That young man from Skywind Ridge is a dark horse. He killed Yu Yuankue and the others, but now he can contend with Yu Shuangyan. Doesn't that mean he's at least in the top 30 of the sword ranking? Many lords looked surprised as they turned to look at Qin Zhen. Skywind Ridge had really picked up a treasure this time. Qin Zhen's tense heart relaxed a little, and he let out a deep breath. Damn it! When did such a monster appear in Skywind Ridge? The purple smoke overlord's expression was extremely ugly. Do you think he's... The yellow dragon lord seemed to have thought of something, and his heart skipped a beat. That's impossible. The purple smoke lord's face stiffened. A great battle broke out on the Thunder Prison Mountain. In the surging thunder, Yi Guqin and Yu Shuangyan's swords collided. Their figures flashed, and they fought fiercely. Normally, these geniuses wouldn't fight unless they reached the end. This was because fighting in the lightning tide consumed too much true qi. If their true qi was used up too much, they wouldn't have enough energy to reach the top. However, this didn't affect Yi Guqin at all. Yi Guqin could resist the thunder with his body alone. His qi alone was enough to make it difficult for his true qi to be exhausted. However, the situation was not good for Yu Shuangyan. She thought that Yi Guqin was at most a little stronger than Yu Yuankue. When it came to the real fight, Yu Shuangyan finally understood how difficult it was to deal with the young man in front of her. Flying Frost Sword Art, 9 Heavens Frost Cry. The longer they delayed, the worse it would be for Yu Shuangyan. Therefore, she directly used the ultimate move of the Flying Frost Sword technique. Although the Flying Frost Sword technique was only a superior king-level sword technique, the power of its ultimate move was no weaker than a lower royal-level sword technique. Void Destruction. Yi Guqin also used the ultimate move of the Great Void Sword Wave. The sword edge vibrated in the air and collided with Yu Shuangyan's ice sword. The cold sword energy that could almost freeze the void was directly shattered by the sword wave. Ice Sword Dao, Ice Domain. Yu Shuangyan finally displayed the sword Dao that she had comprehended. To be able to comprehend the sword Dao at this age, even if it was just an ordinary sword Dao, was enough to be called a genius. Unfortunately, the Yi Guqin that Yu Shuangyan was facing was not a genius, but a monster. A blood-red light burst out from Yi Guqin's eyes. A terrifying blood-red sword essence surged out from his body like a sea of blood. That's Sword Dao. That young man has also comprehended the sword Dao. Some of the lords who were watching the fight from the periphery were shocked. And it's not an ordinary sword Dao. It's the Supreme Azura Sword Dao. One of the lords could feel the killing intent in the blood-red sword energy and couldn't help but change his expression slightly. There was a world of difference between an ordinary sword Dao and a supreme sword Dao. The difficulty and power of comprehending the sword Dao were also worlds apart. It's the supreme sword Dao, the Azura sword Dao that is best at attacking. There was quite an uproar around the Thunder Prison Mountain. After all, the supreme sword Dao could only be seen in the top 10 geniuses on the sword roll. The lords were indeed surprised that this unknown young man from Tianfeng Ridge actually possessed a peerless sword principle. As expected. Qin Zhen's eyes were also slightly shocked. The appearance of the Azura sword Dao made Qin Zhen even more certain of Yi Guqin's identity. Who are you? The indifference on Yu Shuangyan's face finally disappeared completely. What replaced it was extreme astonishment. The strength of the young man in front of her had far exceeded her expectations. Yiguchen's lips curled into a cold smile. He wasn't worried that the Azura sword Dao would expose his true identity. After all, although there were very few people who comprehended the supreme Azura sword Dao, it wasn't unique to Yiguchen. I've warned you many times, but unfortunately, you don't know what's good for you. Yiguchen brandished his sword and performed the god-slaying sword technique. With the enhancement of the Azura sword Dao, the power was even more powerful. In addition, Yiguchen's cultivation of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth also made his sword moves more powerful than before. Ice domain, imprison. Yushuang Yan gritted her teeth. Her iceberg-like aloofness was completely shattered in front of Yiguchen's strength. She could no longer maintain her condescending arrogance. In the surrounding void, icy sword chi condensed as if to form an ice cage, imprisoning Yiguchen within. Azura blood C18 levels. Yiguchen's eyes were completely swallowed by the blood-red color, like two blood moons. After a long time, he finally performed the Azura sword Dao's sword domain again, the Azura blood C18 levels. The blood-red sword intent spread out like a tide, and in the endless blood sea, the 18 levels of blood prison overturned the earth and sky. Peerless sword Dao domain. Yushuang Yan's face turned serious. For the first time, she felt that it was tricky. In her eyes, her only real opponents in the 5 academies selection were Hua Xingjie, Yin Wufeng, and Gue Jianqiu. But now, Yiguchen, the dark horse, had caught her off guard. Rumble. The Azura blood C18 levels collided with the ice domain. The two sword Dao domains collided, bursting forth with monstrous sword chi that even separated the surging thunder tide. Break. In Yiguchen's eyes, blood-red light burst out 3 feet long, and the Azura blood sea surged to the sky. The 18 levels of blood prison directly broke the ice domain in an extremely forceful and domineering way. Puchi. Yushuang Yan's delicate body was hit by the impact, and she couldn't help but retreat. A stream of blood flowed from the corner of her mouth, which was particularly glaring against her snow-white skin. Yushuang Yan was injured. The lords and aristocratic families who were watching the battle didn't expect this. Yushuang Yan, who was ranked 27th on the sword list, was actually injured by Yiguchen. I miscalculated. If I continue to be entangled here, it will be difficult for me to reach the upper level or even the top with the other geniuses. Yushuang Yan struggled in her heart. She didn't expect that she would be forced to this extent by a nameless young man. Although she also had a trump card that she hadn't used yet, it was obviously impossible for her to use it now. It was a move that she had prepared for Hua Xingjie, Yin Wufeng, and the other geniuses. Moreover, compared to avenging Yu Yuankue, it was more important for her to get a good result and enter the 5 academies. Thinking of this, no matter how unwilling Yushuang Yan was, her delicate body flashed quickly, and she retreated like a snowflake. Yushuang Yan, who had an extraordinary reputation, actually chose to flee. Qin Paisai and the other geniuses of Tianfeng Ridge were dumbfounded. This. Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing's eyes were also dazed. This was also something that they had never expected. Yiguchen's eyes narrowed slightly. Yushuang Yan wasn't too stupid. He couldn't fight to the death with Yushuang Yan now. However, there were some small fries that had to be dealt with. Yiguchen couldn't help but look at the Su siblings. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.